Let me call this meeting to order for the Carver Finance Committee for 6:30-ish. Do me a favor, Kate. Once you have them go over the, we'll find on the table. Have them go over the minutes of the last meeting, the minutes from the February 24th meeting.
You guys want to review the minutes?
Yeah, why don't you do that for a quick minute on the table. We need accommodations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I don't like it, Tom, I have to make the motions. And I don't like that. I'll make it. I make them. Oh, now.
Alan, would you like us to go ahead and?
Yeah.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from February 24th, 2020 for the Carver Finance Committee.
A second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'm going to abstain, I was not there. All right. And I'm not sure what Alan had next. We have the discussion of the overall budget and warrant prior to the select board meeting, but we can wait until Alan is here to move forward with that. Does anyone have any comments right now while we wait?
Okay, so I don't know.
Okay. So it's something from the record.
Thank you.
I don't know what it is. I said, I'll see you Tuesday.
Yes.
Is there gonna be? I'm like, I'm just giving it to you. Yeah. Good.
Did it go?
Yeah.
Can you use that?
So,
I think so,
I abstain.
You abstain? Yeah, so it's 801. Is that right?
Is that duct tape? Paper for now? Back of my head, the whole. I told you, I just realized I was balding the last one.
Okay, real quick. You all have copies of the warrant?
Yes.
I also emailed you guys all copies of the warrant, so you have a few minutes to take a peek. Before I get carried away, MMA breakfast is this Friday morning.
Yep.
I have a few people already on. Anybody else want to take part? Adam, you said you might.
It's possible, yes, sir.
Kelly, did you want to go to it?
I can't.
Friday?
Friday morning, 8 o'clock.
Can't.
So, okay. Just, this is the last call for it. Let's do the next meeting date before they come in here and disrupt us. I have Friday, I'm sorry, Monday the 23rd. That going to work for everybody?
I won't be here that day.
Get you a babysitter. Rose will babysit.
She might have to.
She will. She's got the kid bug.
Not after my kids.
Well, that's what I'm hoping. That's what I was planning on.
Yeah.
All right, that night we're going to take up the grant applications because that's got to get done.
Yep.
We have a couple of transfer requests. One will be from the police department, one will be from the emergency services. We may have some more input from the town clerk. We're not sure yet, depending upon how this election funding turns out for her. And then we'll get into the trash issue again. We have some, in fact, Michael will have some, what I think to be exciting news tonight, that I'm not going to spoil his surprise, but there's a pretty good thing that's been negotiated that I'm pretty pleased with. So hopefully that should work. So we're okay on the 23rd. Everybody's good except Beth. We got to find her a babysitter. Kelly, do you want to do the minutes for that night while we have you here?
Sure.
The 23rd? So we'll plan on you for that. Give Mary Ann a little break. As I said, tonight's not being recorded, because the 7 o'clock will be. That's our joint meeting. So tonight's forum's going to be, we're all going to be up here. The auditor's going to come out and give her report for the town. Anybody that has any questions, I'm assuming the chair's going to allow any members to ask questions and partake in it. We're really happy about the audit results this year. It's come out very good. Meg just now sent them to me in an email. I'll get them all out to you guys tonight, so you'll have them all in your inbox. I didn't have them prior to this, or you would have already had them. I have my original budget. We've gone through all the numbers. The selectmen are going to know what our vote was tonight for the various items. And then in the warrant, when you start to see things like articles that are bylaw changes, if you look at the bottom of that topic, if it does not include the FinCom, it's not us. If it does include the FinCom, then it's okay for us to weigh in on it. But some of these
Alan, are we gonna
articles are bylaw changes and so forth. Obviously, the Article 18, FinCom's bylaw change, just so everybody's aware, this is, the Governance Committee years back put stipends in for FinCom members. That was voted on and passed at a town meeting. It just never got cleaned up in the bylaws. So this is nothing more than cleaning up the language of the bylaw to remove that portion that says they shall serve without pay. Because we've been getting a stipend for, I think it's since 2015. That's when I went back and had to research it. Part 2 on Article 10, there's a FinCom spot. This is to exempt the deputy chief from provisions of the civil service laws. That's been approved by the unions. I suspect that goes in conjunction with town meeting if they should approve a deputy chief's position. So I'll take, we can certainly, as a FinCom, weigh in on that. If you want to discuss that, we can do that. Save a little time during the actual meeting. Or I'll take a motion.
Which article?
This will be on page 17.
Article 11.
It's part 2.
Thank you.
Article 10.
It's actually Article 10, Part 2.
No, Article 10.
No, I'm sorry, you're right,
Yeah.
it is Article 11. I also believe the union is on board with this, too. Anyone?
Do you know if is there a reason why we're not listed under it as having to be included as part of the discussion, but Article 21, the Town-Owned Property Committee? Is there a reason why FinCom wasn't included to have a representation on that committee? Do you happen to know the history of the,
On 21?
Article 21, it's page 27.
Town-owned property committee bylaw.
It's a Town-Owned Property Committee bylaw that would meet to discuss what to do with town-owned property. There's no representation from FinCom on there. To me, it sort of seems relevant, common sense, but there's planning, redevelopment, conservation, recreation, housing.
Interesting.
I'm just curious if there was a thought behind
I don't know this, I don't know anything about
leaving them
this.
off.
Certainly would be a question for the chairman of the select board. We'll see why that can't be amended. I don't think FinCom should be excluded from anything.
Right. You getting all these notes? You getting all these notes?
This is exciting.
Told you it was gonna be a very easy night for you.
All right, so you wanted a
All I
motion-
know is it's hot in here. That's all.
It is warmer
You
now.
wanted a motion to approve Article 11, section.
Whatever you wanna take, if you wanna to get some out of the way, just so we have some FinCom voting on this.
All right,
I'm easy with it.
Which one
Take the easy ones.
Hey, Alan,
Yes, sir?
that article, deputy police chief shall be exempt from provisions, what does that mean, exempt from what?
She will not be, she's coming out of civil service, so they'll put her under contract. But in that contract, it will say that if it doesn't work out, she has the ability to enter back into civil service. Otherwise, you're asking her to stick her neck in a noose. Do you know? Once she goes and becomes a deputy police chief, she's no longer in civil service. She's not in the union.
Okay,
So they'll protect her with a
Right.
contract, like the chief's contract, that says if you don't like being a chief anymore, you have the ability to go back and
Go
be a
back in.
sergeant.
We already pre-selected the deputy?
Well,
Has she been selected?
yeah, they're moving, they're
Keep
trying
saying
to,
she.
yeah, they're
Didn't know if
moving,
we
yeah, they
advertised.
have. So they're trying to move, they're moving Sherry into it.
Well, I figured that part out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I didn't know that it was already done, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I think they just got past the hurdle of the union and so forth, and now town meeting still has to approve it.
Okay, and there's no requirement. for
But
us to
actually,
go
town
out.
meeting is going to establish the position. So,
So, there's no reason to go out and advertise.
I don't know, that's the chief, and he works
The
very
way
well.
this, way this read,
Not
it's
the one false about the other one.
inevitable we go in-house.
This is what they've decided, this is, within
I just didn't know
within
if
the
it was
chief. I have to trust his decision. He works extremely well, they work together, and she does pretty much the duties of the deputy now. So,
Town academy to give a preference,
so we can get behind it, or we cannot get
Yeah,
behind
Chloe,
it.
I read it.
seems to make sense.
Yeah,
Oh, it
just to
does.
sit, well, yeah, to recommend. We would just make a motion to approve it as written.
I make a motion to approve Article 11 as written to town meeting.
I need a second.
I second.
We have a motion made and seconded to approve Article 11 as written, an act to exempt the deputy police chief from provisions of civil service laws. This is a vote that is recommended by the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee. Any further discussion? Finance Committee, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimous, 10-0. Let's do the one on the stipends. Let's get that one out of the way.
Article 18.
Unless they want to reenact it. Of course, they can do whatever they want. Yeah.
Which one are we
It's on page
18.
25,
On page,
Article 18.
I make a motion to approve Article 18 to town meeting.
I second.
Motion made and seconded for Article 18, which is a vote to amend Chapter 4, Sections 4, 3, 6 of the bylaws. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
One
Opposed?
question.
I'm sorry.
Question. Should we be voting on this?
Yes.
It's self-serving?
This is one of those one times when we can because we're asked to weigh in on it. The selectmen still will vote on this, and town meeting still can vote it down. So, for all intents and purposes, this is the dog and pony show because town meeting has the final say.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So this is we can say yes, the selectmen can say yes, and everybody in this room can agree with the yes, and town meeting can say no. And town meeting says no, we all get up and go home, and that's the way that works. Because they're the final authority. All we do is make recommendations. So they're asking for our input on this, and I've explained the reason why the wording is the way it is. It's simply, this is a cleanup of the language. If they decide to leave it in there and enforce it, then everybody on this committee will lose their fabulous multi-million-dollar stipend that they get. That means you can't go to the Bahamas next year. But other than that,
So why was it changed?
because it's in the bylaws, when the original stipend was approved by town meeting, the bylaw language never got cleaned up.
Oh,
This is just changing the wording.
okay.
This is really my fault, because I brought this up last spring and said, we gotta fix this.
Yeah, it's just changing
So-
the wording. It's not changing
Something
the
we can blame
amount.
That's good.
Now, is there any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 10-0. Surprised it wasn't 11-0. We didn't give ourselves a raise, just so that everybody's aware. We did not just vote ourselves an enormous raise or anything like that. We've already supported the organizational changes, we've already supported the monies, we've already supported the transfers. So that'll come down to the,
Article 28, the transfer tax title parcels to Conservation Commission.
really?
And Article 29 has the same column.
28. I want to hear the select board explain that one first.
Yeah, I
I want a little
agree.
more information on that.
Which one is this?
Page 34, Article 28, transfer tax title parcel to Conservation Commission.
And then also Article 29.
I wasn't aware that the Conservation Commission has control over any open space, so I don't know if we're creating something, or what they're doing with it.
Just to clarify, you want the select board to follow by Article 28 and 29?
Yeah, I want more information on that before we take it up on our discussion. We'll see what they got in mind. And I think Article 29 also. And obviously, our grant program was a success because there are no petition articles this year for money. Nobody requested any. So, actually, it's pretty good. We have 2 pending requests. And I think I'll contact the other 2 recipients from last year because they're going to have to come in, and then I'll make it available to them. That was the real reason we needed to talk about the grant program, because the dates that we had plugged into the original contract, first of all, they came and went, and I think we didn't really have a handle on when we wanted to bring them in. It made no sense to have applications in by the end of October when the money was being distributed for the beginning of the fiscal year, which was really after July 1st. They wouldn't see it till, August. So 2 months later, they're looking for a new grant application.
Right.
I would have preferred to see it, and I did want to see it wait until we get into next month, and then deal with them in May, and then we can have the recipients back in May and June, and then if they're approved, then the money is funded. It's always that next fiscal year anyway.
Right.
So that money would go out in July.
Right.
So I think that would make the most sense, and it also brings it fresh, and they have better figures because they're coming to the end of their term, so we get a better idea on how they went about using the grant money, which will help us if they're reapplying, will help us on whether we want to continue to give them money as a grant or cut it back or make other recommendations. The whole thing was really to make them, I don't want to use the word accountable because I think they're all good quality charities, but it just makes them so that they are obligated to come back in and tell us, this is what we did.
Right.
Yeah, I think it validates our process as
Yeah,
well.
and then it validates the fact that, we did the right thing.
And I'm sorry, Alan, when are they coming back in?
We're going to probably bring them in, my hope is going to be May and June.
Okay.
And then we can have the interviews. We have 2 applications sitting. I think it's the Women's Health and Shane Gives Thanks. And we're going to get a South Shore Community Action, and I haven't contacted the other one. His name escapes me, but I will contact him. So that's where that's at. Yeah, we can do that. Well, we don't really have to adjourn it, we're just going to set it aside and suspend it. So, yeah. So that's it. Anybody got any quick questions before we sit down with the selectmen? Then, based on that, I'd like a motion to suspend this part of the meeting, and then we'll just wait for the select board to open their meeting and make us part of it.
I make a motion to suspend the meeting.
Second.
Second, motion made and seconded to suspend. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Awesome.
Call the meeting to order. Meeting of the Carver Select Board, Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020. This meeting's being cablecast by Area 58 Community Access Media, Channel 15. There are openings on several committees. Please refer to the Select Board page on our website for a listing and application. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our community prayer. Almighty God, humbly we pray your blessing as we concern our life with the opportunity to serve our community. Enhance us with your spirit of dignity and selflessness. May we become instruments of support and understanding as we seek to bring an environment of trust and purpose among all who provide the many services that make us all that we can become. help us achieve the goals of our commitment in this office that is now our responsibility. And especially, we lift our prayers for all the citizens of our community that we have been allowed to serve, that they may discover the fullness and joy of life that we all seek. And keep those serving in our armed forces and our first responders in our hearts and thoughts. We now reach the point in our meeting which we have citizen participation. We set 10 minutes aside at the start of meetings for any citizens that would like to address the board. We ask citizens to limit their participation to about 3 minutes in order to give other people the opportunity to speak. I am not sure where we're sending them.
You actually skipped a section.
What did I skip?
You have the amended.
No, I was going to do it. So, okay. Anyway. Okay, so I'm just trying to figure out where we're going to sit the citizen that might want to speak.
I'll give up my seat.
Okay, thank you. Were there any citizens that wanted to speak this evening? Yes, ma'am. Well, no, we need the home television audience. Our Nielsen ratings have suffered, so we need to take advantage of any opportunity to have citizens recorded.
Well, good evening. My name is Joanna Layden, live in Wenham Shores. I've been there for 47 years. We're here tonight, our group back there, to show continued support for Article 29. Hopefully, we'll all be here for that. But anyway, we want to thank the selectmen for working, working with us through the entire journey. And ask for your continued favoritism as well. And we would like a vote 5-0 tonight. That'd be great. I think this thing is a little bit weird. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you.
Was there anyone else that wanted to speak to the board this evening? There being none, we will move to next, which is to mention that we had a vote in executive session this evening on contract negotiations with the town administrator. And I'd like to read the following announcement. The Board of Selectmen and the town administrator are happy to announce that they have mutually agreed to an amended contract for Mr. Milanowski's employment with the town. The parties have agreed to amend the existing contract to provide for a 2-year agreement during which Mr. Milanowski will be available for consulting services as needed. Mr. Milanowski will continue to serve as town administrator until April 17th, 2020, and will serve as an executive consultant until April 16th, 2022. The town would like to acknowledge and congratulate Mr. Milanowski's tenure as town administrator. Mr. Milanowski was particularly important in revamping the financial structure of the town and has put the town in an excellent financial position for the future. We look forward to working with Mr. Milanowski on a consulting basis, and we wish him all the best. The board voted unanimously on this agreement in our executive session held before this meeting, and will now take a vote to affirm the agreement in public session. What is the pleasure of the board?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. The board will begin a search for a new town administrator as soon as possible. Ms. Hewins, would you like to provide a little color around that?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I spoke with the Collins Center for Public Management. They do things like interim town administrator searches. They also do searches for permanent town administrators. And they have actually done this for us in the past. And the upshot is that a search for an interim is free. It's a service they provide for free. They have a pool of individual retired town administrators who are interested in being interim TAs. And so what we would need to do would be to give them a description of the town administrator position, our timeline, and a contact person. And then they would give that information to this pool of interim TAs. And then whoever's in that pool that's interested would apply directly to us, and the Collins Center would be out of the process. And again, that search is free for the interim. For a permanent, of course, it's not, because it's more involved.
And the board will have to sort of...
Yeah. Decide what
But
we want.
I think our hope, though, is if we go with the interim route, is to have someone in place prior to Michael's last day, so that there can maybe be some overlap and so forth. But again, it's
what I'm-
flexible, and we're just developing that.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, in light of this information, could you please allow citizens' participation one more time? This is a little bit of shocking news to me in this town.
I appreciate your inquiry, but I've got to, to be fair to everyone, I have to continue on as the meeting. We're past that, but I appreciate your sentiments. Okay, we will return to our agenda. Request for an appointment to the Cultural Council, Catherine Stacy. Ms. Stacy? Yep. Yep, why don't you come forward, and if Adam would give up his...
Thank you.
So, thank you for your application. I guess we'll take questions from the board before any nominations? Anyone?
I read your application. It's quite impressive. Thank you very much for coming on board with us. Be well needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
I agree. I've read the application. I think it's an excellent fit for the Carver Cultural Council, and I just want to thank you for stepping up. Thank you.
I'll echo my fellow board members. I want to thank you so much for stepping forward. It's good to see people now starting to come up and applying for these positions and getting more involved in the town. We really appreciate it. So thank you very much.
There's nothing left to say. Thank you so much. And what a great application. I appreciate it. It is a perfect fit.
Do you have any questions for us?
No, I look forward to participating in the town, though.
All right, what's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we now move to a series of Chapter 61A applications.
Want to vote all four unless there's no objection?
Well, I guess, can you give us a little background on them? We've got a note from the Director of Planning and Conservation Agent.
So, just for the record, some of these you've already approved for tax increment, for pilots, for some of these. We do have people in the audience if you want to go through these individually. This is the standard Section 61 finding. They have been signed off by the appropriate permitting departments. I know in the future, some of the members of the selectmen want to have a further review on these to see if the town wants to buy the land back. And I think you still need to have a discussion as to how you go about that in the future. But again, this is a status quo of what we've done in the past. And just given the audience here and the long agenda, I'm just trying to save a little time. Again, unless people want to go through these individually. We can have everybody come up and talk about them, but it's what's the board's pleasure.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, these are all basic cranberry bogs. I looked at the maps, and there's very little upland involved. They appear to be mainly cranberry bogs, so I'd like to move that we approve or disapprove all four at once.
You have a second?
Second.
Further discussion?
I just want to make mention that these are all solar projects, too, just to let people understand that what's
Okay.
the intent of the properties are. Thank you.
No further discussion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? The ayes have it.
Now we have to actually vote on them. That was just to vote on them together.
Does someone want to make a vote to approve all four?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Further discussion? Being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, the ayes have it. We now move to our audit presentation from Powers and Sullivan. Did we need to call you back into session? Or are you going to sit in, okay.
we're suspended, so when we
Okay.
get ready, we just will
All right.
reconvene.
Meg, would you grab a microphone and just make a quick introduction? Yes. Thanks, Adam.
So Renee is here to do the presentation of the exit conference, discussion of the FY19 financial statements for the town of Carver. In the past, it's been Rich Sullivan, but Rich has since retired, and Renee will be taking over the town audit. And I worked with Renee in Situate, and she's great. So we're very lucky to have her as our auditor, and ready?
Thank you. Thank you.
Could you pull the mic closer?
A little closer.
Can you hear me?
That's better.
Okay. So thank you for having me here tonight. Again, my name is Renee Davis. I will be taking over as audit partner on your audit engagement. And what I'd like to do tonight is go over the results of the fiscal year 2019 audit, talk a little bit about the process that we go through in doing the audit. And as part of preparing this, I wasn't part of your audit team this year. I'm going to go over the results of it, but also to give a little bit of history of your financial trends, because you've had a really good story over the past several years since we've been doing the audit and since you've implemented some of your financial policies. So I'd like to talk about that a little bit. And as part of the results, to go over your federal grant audit, your single audit, and as well as the status of your management letter comments. So the objective of our audit work is always for us to be able to opine or give our opinions on your financial statements and on your federal grant reports. So all of the work that we do in the field, all of the testing that we do, is really for us just to be able to give an opinion on the financial statements. So the financial statements that were delivered to you, although we help to put them together, we are not responsible for them. They're the responsibility of management, and we own only that opinion. The audit is done in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards as well as government auditing standards. So the reports, if you're used to looking at regular financial statements of corporations, they're a little bit different. There's a few different bases of accounting that we'll go over in more detail. So we plan the audit to get reasonable rather than absolute assurance on the numbers. In other words, we just want to make it clear to people we're not looking at immaterial or every little number. We're looking to make sure that the town has an overall system of internal controls to be able to produce your financial statements accurately and timely. Management is responsible for the financial statements. They take responsibility. They actually give us a representation letter showing us that they take responsibility and that they do understand the information that's provided in those. We do, again, we provide assistance in putting your information into that type of a report. The results of the audit are unqualified or unmodified audit opinions. That's the best opinion that you can get. It means your financial statements are what we would consider clean. There were no significant deficiencies, no material weaknesses that were identified. The federal reports also have unqualified or unmodified audit opinions. The financial statements themselves, again, we only own the opinion. The opinion's up front, that's unmodified. After the audit opinion is management's discussion and analysis. That is the summary of your financial results. If there's one, if you don't want to go through and read the whole financial report and you want to know why things changed or why things went up and down, whether your financial position improved or deteriorated, you would get all of that information just by reading what we call the MD&A. After the MD&A are the basic financial statements in the notes. The financial statements first set are full accrual financial statements. They have all of your capital assets, all of your long-term liabilities, like OPEB, like your pension liabilities, things that don't impact your day-to-day operations, things that don't impact your operating budget, but come into a full accrual set of financial statements. After that, we have what we call fund or modified accrual financial statements. That's really how you live your day-to-day. You have your general fund. Included with that are your stabilization reserves, some capital funds, and then broken out separately are your enterprise funds. bigger and more in-depth now than ever are the notes to the financial statements, especially now that you have some long-term liabilities being reported related to pension and OPEB. The notes are pretty extensive related to that. So any more detail that you want on the financial statements, you'd get through the notes. After the basic financial statements themselves, we have what's called required supplementary information. Now, the GASB, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, requires that this information be provided. It is probably the more important information than your financial statements themselves, but your budget to actual. I heard you earlier tonight talking about your upcoming budget, and now you're living in 20. But if you go back and look at fiscal year 19, the budget to actual will show the results of that. It shows what you voted at town meeting, original budget, final budget, and how you did compared to that. Along with that are what we're starting to build 10-year financial trends of your pension, your unfunded pension liability with Plymouth County Retirement, as well as Mass Teachers Retirement, what they're paying in on behalf of your retired teachers, and your other post-employment schedules. So we're starting to build 10-year schedules, so you'll see a history over time of how those liabilities are going up or going down. So the process of the audit, or the coordination of the audit, we come out, it's already March, but we actually come out in May to start. Once you've had your town meeting, we can start looking at your budget for the next fiscal year, make sure that you have a good system of internal controls, to make sure that you're using your accounting system, to make sure people are charging things to the right accounts, that there's proper approvals over them, that you have good procurement procedures, payroll procedures, as well as testing some of your federal grants. So all of that is done before you even end the fiscal year. So budget, we do all the single audit testing. We can confirm or get ready for the end of year audit. Then we kind of go away for a little bit. Once you've closed the books and you're ready for us to come in and audit the end of the year information, we come back usually around November. This year it was November, to audit the actual financial statements. That's when we're looking at your real cutoff procedures to make sure the numbers in the financial statements are accurate, that your balance sheet, your notes, and all the analytics are done. This really we really need for you to have a good system to make sure everything's reconciled, that you have good ledgers for us to start with, for us to be able to come in, for you to be audit ready, for us to come in a short amount of time and get through all this information. Meg, what I know of Meg and what I've been told is that Meg is always very prepared for us and that we get good information from Carver. It's a pretty clean audit. Also, we have cooperation from the school department, which is imperative in us being able to go in and test their federal grants, and all the information that we found was accurate and was received timely. So getting in a little bit to the financial position, the town, I'll show you in a little bit more, but we'll talk just about this year. Your general fund, your budget was $49.1 million. If you're looking at the financial statements, it's in the back, required supplementary information, but that's going to show you, we want to make sure that you're collecting your taxes. You are collecting your real estate taxes. You have a very good collection rate. Your overall revenues came in over budget by $520,000. Your expenditures and your encumbrances were under budget by $1.5 million. That shows that you have good, strong financial controls. All of those things go directly into contributing to your free cash. So your general fund balance, if you look back to the financial statements, just not to confuse you, the general fund in the regular financial statements includes your stabilization fund. So GAAP requires you to put them in the same column. You had $10 million in your general fund. That was about 22.7% of your expenditures. I know your financial policies talk about keeping your undesignated fund balance at a certain percent of your actual revenues and expenditures being almost interchangeable there. You budgeted to use $1.2 million of your free cash, but as per your policies and following your policies, you're not using that for your operations. That's what you like to see. That's what S&P, that's what the rating agencies want to see, that if all of a sudden that free cash number isn't there, that you can continue to provide the services to the town and live within your means, if you will. So you're using your free cash for non-recurring expenditures, for capital, for increasing some of your reserves, and for unforeseen but non-recurring issues. Your stabilization fund balance is within unassigned fund balance in the general fund. Your general stabilization had over $3 million, $3.1 million, and the capital and debt stabilization was $816,000 at the end of the year. Two of your big liabilities that really kind of dwarf all of the other information in these financial statements are pension and OPEB. So we like to focus a little bit on those. The pension liability comes directly from Plymouth County Retirement System. So Plymouth County has an audit every year. They report back to you what your share of their liability is, and that information comes through to your financial statements. This is the fourth year under GAAP or GASB requirements that you've had to actually show that full liability in your financial statements. So you were 2.9% of Plymouth County based on a valuation dated January 1st, 19, and using a discount rate of 7.875%. That liability was $21.3 million at the end of fiscal year 2019. That's measured as of December 31st. So the retirement system has a year end of December 31st. That's where it's measured. That liability went up quite a bit from the year before. The liability the year before was only $15.7 million. It is not unusual, if you remember back to December of 2018 and what happened to the markets, the investments were down. So it happened to everybody, and it has flipped around this year. So because this year, December 31st, was looking a whole lot better. Don't look at last week or what's happened over the past week. But it will be measured again this year as of December 31st, so we expect it to go the other way. You are about 55% funded in your pension liability, and Massachusetts requires you to have a funding schedule to fully fund that by 2040. Right now, your funding schedule with Plymouth is to be fully funded by 2029. So what you're paying in every year for your excess contribution to them is on a trend to be funded by 2029. Again, they have a new valuation done every other year. They can change that. Right now, the law won't let them go past 2040. So there was a negative 7% investment for that year. So that's why it went down, but that's where the $21.3 million on the front of your financial statements comes from. The other big liability, big long-term liability, is your OPEB liability. A little bit different. This is the health insurance that you are giving to your retirees, that you've obligated to give to your retirees. You own the OPEB liability internally, so you have your own valuation. There's no system out there keeping track of that for you. So you hire an actuary to give you those numbers, and you base it on a set of assumptions. Your valuation for this one was dated July 1st, 2017. So the information that we're looking at, that liability, the census data that you're using, was all from 17. And you had a net OPEB liability of $36.9 million. That went down from the prior year. Prior year was 38.5. That liability is measured as of June 30th. That had part of it. You did have a 5.56 investment rate of return. You have started to fund your OPEB liability. So you put money into a trust fund to begin the process of pre-funding that liability. That helped to bring the whole liability down. Your trust balance as of the end of the year was $1.2 million. And we'll look at that in a little bit more detail. But the big difference between OPEB and pension, OPEB, there's no requirement to fund it. There is a requirement for you to measure it and to report it. Although, if you're not, it is a real liability. It's real money that you've assumed. And if you are putting money into a trust fund, it's helping to bring down that liability in total. You're not giving the money away. It's in a trust dedicated for those particular purposes. So it's a good policy. I will say the rating agencies are really looking and paying more attention to what communities are doing to start to pre-fund that liability. The other thing the other big number in your financial statements is debt, your liability for debt. You do have new debt this year of $10.9 million, bringing your total governmental debt up to $37 million. The new debt, you had a police station, some council on aging, library, fields. I know that you have some new debt that was out there recently for school development, so I know the debt has gone up related to that, all exempt. That was exempt debt. Your debt service is about 5% of your budget. What you want to look at with debt is to make sure you're debt burden isn't overly burdensome on your budget, that the percentage that you're paying in debt isn't going to keep you from providing other services to the town, and when it's exempt, then that's not a problem, not an issue for you. Capital lease is pretty small, and you do have some unissued debt that's been authorized, $3.4 million left for a new elementary school and some structural repairs. So we always want to pay attention to what's already been authorized for the treasurer to borrow, to know what you have coming down the line. Capital assets. Capital assets in any government, they're different than what you think in the private sector. It's not something that you necessarily even keep on your ledger or keep track of on a day-to-day basis. It's something that's done really for financial reporting, to keep your financial statements in accordance with GAAP, and it's done on a historical cost basis. So there's no current costs related to this. You had $10 million, so total $97.5 million in capital assets. Your additions, $10 million, almost all schools, so all school construction, some public safety, some public works, will include some infrastructure all the time, some of your roadways. So it's historical cost of that, and really not part of your regular operating budget at all. You want to make sure that you're maintaining your capital infrastructure, but really the accounting for it is to prepare the financial statements. Other balance sheet components that we focus on, a big thing for us is making sure that you have really strong controls over your cash and your collections and your receipts. You did. Your cash and investments total $26.4 million. So there's a strong emphasis on that while we're doing the audit. We've had no issues related to that. And your receivables were average about $6.4 million in total. Some other small accrued liabilities of $2.6 million, which is just really year-end timing issues. So I mentioned up front that this is my first year here in Carver. I'm looking forward to working here, and to be able to do this, I did a little bit of a financial analysis to look at what had happened over the past several years. You did implement some strong financial policies back in 2014. I got a copy of those. And since that time, your stabilization funds have gone up quite a bit, $2.4 million increases in your stabilization fund. You didn't have any method for pre-funding OPEB back then. Now you have an OPEB trust. You've started to pre-fund. You have $1.2 million, and hopefully that will continue to increase. Your general fund balance has gone up by $3.4 million. That means the town has more financial flexibility. If you have a bad year, you're going to be able to still provide services without having to make cuts that maybe some other communities would have to. You're not relying on free cash or one-time revenues to fund your operating budget, which means you're living within your means. And you're actively addressing long-term liabilities like pension and OPEB. The other thing that I didn't mention, you also have the Community Preservation Act. That's always sort of a bonus. You get some money from the state, you assess some through your tax rate, and that allows you to improve your open space, historic preservation, and affordable housing. The next slide was just to show you the financial trends from 2014 to 2019. So this is showing you how you have, if you look way over to the left of that slide, back in 14, you were under $3 million in your general fund balance. Stabilization fund was 1.6, and you had no OPEB trust. And then you go all the way to the right to 2019, you can see how it improved. It sort of tells the story there. Another part of it, just to move on to the single audit, one thing you have to, because you spend over $750,000 worth of federal grants every year, you are required to have what we call a federal grant audit or a single audit. To be able to do this, we come in, we look at all of your federal expenditures, we do a risk assessment based on the amounts that you're spending in each of these categories, and typically, with a community of your size, it's almost always special education. Unless you have any big storms or anything like that, special education gets the most federal funding. So we have to focus our audit on your special education grants, which means, I talked earlier about the school cooperating. We go in and do a lot of digging into those school grants to make sure that they are applying for them properly, using federal funds properly, and really making sure that they have the proper records that the federal government is requiring of them. There were no audit findings related to that. It was a clean opinion. And one of the things that I will say you had to do, it wasn't just business as usual. To be able to keep that clean opinion, you actually had to come up with a formal document to tell us what you have for internal controls over your federal grants. So uniform guidance or the federal regulations have increased, and they require you to actually put that in writing, and the town of Carver was able to provide that to us. So not just business as usual, and I have to say we haven't had as many clean opinions there as we have this year as we have in the past. And finally, just to talk about the management letter. I mentioned up front that you had no material weaknesses, you had no significant deficiencies. There was nothing that rose to that level that we found, but typically what we do is if we identify other issues that during the audit, that we think should be reported to you, improving your internal controls, or things that are maybe not significant, but things that we would recommend that you consider, we put that in a written management letter. So there were no material weaknesses in internal control, there were no significant deficiencies, and there are actually no new comments this year. What we have is a collection of comments from prior years that we're repeating, and some of them, I'm going to say, have been addressed. Some are unresolved, some are resolved. The first one related to cash collections, and that really talks about, you don't have a lot of cash collections, but you do have some departments that were collecting cash outside of your regular controls. Whenever there's cash being collected, there's risk. And even though it may not be material to your financial statements, we still want to make sure you have the strongest controls you can. Right now with technology, there's the ability to really limit how much cash you are taking in those other departments. And it hasn't been completely resolved yet, but I know that there is a plan in place to start to resolve that in fiscal year 20. Reconciliation of the North Carver Water District receivables. The billing process, I believe, has moved. I don't think that is fully resolved at this point. Again, that's one, we kind of keep up with them until they're fully resolved, but I think that management is working on getting that one resolved as well. We'll continue to follow up until that's completely resolved. The housing loan receivable comment has been in there for a couple of years. That one is still unresolved. They're having an issue with reconciliation. We'll look into that. The school department invoices was resolved, so that one will go away for next year. We had 2 informational comments last year, one on the documentation of internal controls for federal grants. I just told you they resolved that. That was a big one. And still working on is the Plymouth County Retirement Association. I think that's been around for 2 years. So when I come in this year, when we come in the spring, one of our things is looking at last year's management letter comments. So any of these comments that have been around now that are not fully resolved, we'll work with management to see what can be done. So that's all I have for the audit presentation. I do want to just reiterate, I'm happy to be here. New to me, so I'll be out here before you know it to start the next audit. If you have any questions on any of the reports in front of you or anything on the slide, I'm happy to take them.
Questions from the board? I guess, did you indicate that at this time, based on valuations, that our last payment towards the catching up on our pension is 2029?
That's what it says in their report.
Okay. But again, based on
that's
market performance and so forth, that could be stretched out?
So what they do is they have to come up with a funding schedule that's approved by PARAC. Their current funding schedule is 2029.
Okay. And then on OPEB, it really was only a few years back that the audits began to pick up on the OPEB liability.
That's true.
And my understanding is that not all towns have actually jumped in or are following. You know, I guess you're supposed to be with a certified program in order to be able to get credit.
Right, so you have to have a trust fund, which
Right.
you have established.
Mhm.
So back in 2004, I'm going to say 2014, but several years ago, there wasn't even a mechanism for you to have a trust fund in Massachusetts. Now you can. You had to adopt Chapter 32B. You did that. You've established the trust fund. You've started to put money into it. That money is being invested. So that helps to bring down that liability. Unlike pension, you don't have a certain funding schedule per se. what will continue to happen over time, we hope that as you continue to put money in that liability should go down.
And bonding companies and so forth are looking
They're
to see that you've recognized there's a liability and that you've made a commitment to try to pay it down.
Absolutely. They want to make sure that you are continuing to put money towards that on a regular basis. It also helps the actuary. So you hire an actuary to come in and value that information. The actuaries look at your commitment to funding it. So when they're trying to come up with a discount rate that's acceptable for you to use, they look at not only what you have in there, but your commitment to continue to put money in over time.
Alan, did you want to have your committee in session, so in case they want to ask any questions?
That would be wonderful, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Committee's called back into session. Anybody want to talk about this? Nobody?
I think, in your opinion.
Oh, you want to pull the mic in
sorry,
closer?
guys. I mean, to me, this seems like we had a very good audit. In your opinion, do you know what made this a very good audit this year?
I don't know that you've had, I'm going to say your financial position is strong. As I mentioned, preparedness, so I think that your staff was very prepared for us, that we had no issues getting the information, verifying the information. I really think that helps. It doesn't always go that way.
Yeah. Yeah, no, this sounds like we had a very good year and a good audit.
I agree.
Any other questions?
I have a comment, Mr. Chairman. I think this is an excellent audit. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong.
We've come quite a long way since 2014. You'd agree?
I would agree.
I want to commend the Board of Selectmen for essentially canning the architect of the reason why this audit is so good. I'm sure you're all very happy with yourselves tonight. I'm very unhappy with the results. I have the right to speak.
Out of order, please. Please.
This is the architect of this.
This is where you want to end, and it's in place.
Okay, well, congratulations.
Mr. Dunham?
Yeah, just so the townspeople can be reassured, I know you do these audits through many communities in the state of Massachusetts. Would you still say Carver, in our financial position and our policies, rates us still at the high end of other comparable communities in the state of Massachusetts?
Yes, I would.
See, I didn't want to make too much of a commitment there.
Any other questions?
I had one, if I could. Sure. You, Mr. Chair. Highlighted in your financial position highlights in the general fund, you referenced the fact that revenues exceeded the budget by $520,000 and that expenditures and encumbrances were under budget by $1.5 million.
Yes.
What I'm trying to wrap my brain around is that relatively common, or are those numbers anomalies?
They're not anomalies. If you have the financial statements, I would just tell you, if you look at page 54 and 55, it'll break that out by function, so you will see by each revenue type what you took in. It's not. What happens with that, you budget the best you can, right? You budget, you're estimating what you're going to get in for revenues. Real estate is the big number there, and that's a real commitment. You really sent out those bills. As long as you're collecting on your real estate taxes, and you are, then we expect that to be significant. Turning back money at the end of the year, all that means is that departments didn't spend everything they budgeted, and I will tell you, the $1.5 million, part of that was you didn't spend everything you budgeted for debt service. So I think $600,000 of that is directly related to debt service. It wasn't underspending all by departments. And all that does, it gives you the opportunity to, it's not money that you're giving back. It becomes part of your free cash, and part of your free cash allows you to then do other capital items.
Yeah, to me, it's interesting because it highlights the fact that we're not spending everything that we're budgeted for. It's not a mad dash on the last day of the year to spend it or you lose it. And to me, it's evidence of sound fiscal management where you're making sure that you're budgeting for things appropriately, but that you're not spending everything that's in the kitty just to spend it.
And again, that page 55 will show you turnbacks by department, which departments didn't spend all of their money. Usually there's a reserve fund would be part of that. Some of them are pretty close. The only ones that are over are assessments that you have no control over, but it does show strong financial controls. You don't want to have those turnback numbers too low, because that means people are, one, either, like you said, running to spend every dime at the end of the year, or their budgets are so tight that they're not able to provide the services that you would expect.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, carry on.
Okay, that's all. So that's all I have. If you have no other questions, thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. All right, we will now move on to the annual town meeting warrant article review. And the recommendation by the FinCom with discussion and possible vote. So you should all have new packets.
Mr. Chairman, do you want to go through the warrant article by article?
Yes, please. And we should have in front of us the draft warrant that says dated March 2nd, 2020.
Correct.
Everyone have it?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have it, Bob?
I have the earlier version. I didn't print out
I
a new
think,
one.
They were put on our desk.
That's the
You have one, Sarah?
Yeah, I have two.
All right, go ahead, sir.
You got one?
Article 1 is the annual town report, as well as discussion on abolishing the medical marijuana center bylaw subcommittee and the Sheriff Park trustees. And do you want to read this?
I think we had some questions as to whether those committees had been contacted and expressed any opinions.
Yep, the police chief agreed to dissolve the medical marijuana committee, and we have a letter from Clark Griffith stating that he is the last remaining trustee and he's resigning, and the committee can be resolved with town approval.
Okay. Questions from the select board? Questions from the FinCom?
I don't think FinCom has any stand in any of this.
Pardon me?
Yeah, I don't,
Well, are you gonna vote? Have you voted on everything?
we have not. I voted on this.
Okay, well, I think we're gonna vote on these as we go through them, so.
You'd like.
We'll start with the
I
select board.
think, Mr. Chairman, the Finance Chair's committee is correct, as normally the Finance Committee Chair does not vote on Article 1. So I'm just going to cross this off. It'll just be a
Okay.
vote of the Board of Selectmen.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board recommend Article 1.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Meg, can I get you somehow up here? You get on the podium. The podium.
Meg, you can have my seat if you want.
Article 2 is supplemental appropriations from the Cranberry Village retained earnings to the Cranberry Village Enterprise Fund operating budget of $7,500. So say you, Meg.
So over the last couple of years, Cranberry Village revenues have decreased, but we've maintained the same budget. So last year they were short. This year they're short. They do have a significant retained earnings, and what I've noticed is that this fiscal year, Cranberry Village revenues are increasing again. So just for fiscal '20, they will have a deficit, and we need to take $7,500 out of their retained earnings, because I believe that there have been operating and maybe a couple of capital expenditures in there that will exceed what they were budgeted in April.
And his background, I think it was about 3 years ago, the Board of Selectmen lowered the water rates for Cranberry Village because there was a surplus. So you did reduce down the water rates so that should there be some need for expenses that are outside of the ordinary expenses, this would be the process to do that. So this is anticipated, but there was no need to keep the water rates higher when you had surplus in the bank. So we'd recommend that both boards would approve this article.
Questions from the select board?
I just had one thing that's a possible typo, Mr. Chair, where it says transfers from various departmental budgets when it's just this one fund.
So transfer.
Yeah,
I think it's probably written in anticipation
from
of multiple.
departmental. Yeah, just one department or one budget.
And Sarah, that would also be in the proposed motion, correct?
Yes, yes, thank you.
No, the proposed motion on the paper.
So there's no plural.
No plural. So it's budget transfer.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman of the Finance Committee?
Committee?
Do you know what the balance will be left in the Cranberry Village retained earnings after the 7,500?
Ballpark, Meg?
I'm going to say it's still over $100,000.
I was just wondering.
You want us to vote, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, we'll both vote, so you can go first.
FinCom? No? Motion?
I make a motion to recommend Article 2 with the change of the single department.
I second.
Motion made and seconded to Article 2. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 10 to 0. I want to make a note that this is historic tonight. This is the first time in over 22 years that the Finance Committee has been this large. We are a membership of 10, so we had to call in extra seating tonight. So thank you for accommodating us, but this is a historic moment, and I'm extraordinarily proud of that.
As you should be.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Board of Selectmen of the Select Board recommend Article 2 with the change, per the changes suggested by Ms. Hewens.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, if I could have a blanket motion by both boards as follows. The warrant you have in front of you is 98-99%. There are a few items that the attorneys need to adjust. And Town Council has asked for both boards to grant them the ability of modifying the articles as needed for a legal format without changing the substance of the articles. We normally do this every year because after the board votes, moving things back and forth is Town Council sometimes needs to adjust language to make sure that the articles are in proper form.
So you're representing that any changes that would be made would not change the intent or nature of the
Substance.
article. It's more typos or just legal wording. But what we vote on this evening, we will have, whatever understanding we have that we're voting on this evening remains in place.
Correct. And should something trigger that threshold, it would have to come back to both boards. But again, this is a standard thing we do every year just to make sure that, as Sarah pointed out, taking out an S, if we had missed that, they would have picked that up, but they wouldn't be able to do it without this authorization.
Does someone on the Board of Select...
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You need the FinCom on that, too?
Someone on the FinCom?
I make a motion.
Second? Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman and members of both boards and committees, Article 3 is our standard allocation of free cash. However, what's different this year is that we have A through H, which totals $1.355 million, is what has been approved to date by DOR. Items I and J is identified as free cash certification number 2. Okay? And that's for $1.262 million. That is the surplus of money that was saved out of the elementary school project. I mentioned this to the board last year that this was going to happen. We were actually thought it was going to be $100,000 lower. Just being conservative, we were able to further save expenses under the leadership of Bill Harriman. And we did receive certification back from the state a few weeks ago that that is the number, $1.262 million. That $1.262 million we have identified here as a second certification for free cash. The state, in conversations with town council and DOR, may look at another process for this. So that may change as to the formatting, but the intent of where it's going to go will remain the same. And again, I'm just bringing notice to that. But let me go back to items A through H, because that's the easy part. Again, which is a total amount of $1.3 million. Again, based upon our financial policies, we're supposed to put all of our free cash into one-time uses. That's what this is identified as going into. Just running through these items just real quickly is that, and some of these we've talked about, Article A, or Section A, is for the town school special education reserve fund. This allows the school to provide mid-year adjustments if they have children that move into the district that were not reasonably known at the time of the budget. Again, this goes back to the cooperation we have with the schools so that their budget is very tight. They base their budget, which they have approved the town meeting number, the Board of Selectmen's number for our financial plan. You didn't hear much fanfare about it this year, but they did approve it at the last meeting, down to the penny that we had recommended that's in our financial policies. With that, it's based upon what their known expenses are today. If they have any children between now and the next school year move in the district or out of the district, it does change the special education. This just gives them that some ability to go back and take that money out should they need to. B is for the Recreation Committee to support programs and activities. For the last few years, we've been funding special programs of $22,500 for the recreation program. They have expanded the services they offer, and as everyone knows, there's a lot more activities happening into the town. I would hope that in the FY22 budget that this line item at that point it can be better incorporated into the operating budget. Item C is $576,000 for a townwide radio infrastructure and priorities 1 and 2 project. This was a project that was presented by the fire department to the finance committee and to the Board of Selectmen. I will say the town, in addition to this number, received a grant of $99,000 through our Community Compact grant. As you may remember, I was fortunate to apply for the first one of these in the state. We were the first one to implement the program. Those funds allowed us to do the combined DPW department, as well as the combined IT department. So that program has been very successful. From there, we are setting up a fund for ongoing emergency radio communications maintenance operation funds. This is so that, again, if there's an unforeseen expense that's outside of their normal day-to-day operating budget, such as a tower goes down from the standpoint of one of the signal laser pieces, that they would have a fund to go back and replace that. That was in their presentation as well. From there, we do have townwide operation and maintenance, field maintenance and supplies of $45,000. We have an additional $262,530 to support the town hall complex, the senior housing fire suppression cistern at the police station. We have upgraded the cistern at the police station so that it will have a direct line connecting over to where the generators are at the at the library, which will provide better fire protection for the fire department, that they can tap into this cistern as well. This further enhances the certification that they receive for having, one of the top 3% fire departments in the country. This is just another piece on top of that eventually may help them get to 1. So this is there already was going to be a fire cistern at the police department. This just further enhances that. Item G is Town Hall Transitional Assistance and Restructuring. This will help the Board of Selectmen move forward with any restructuring that they're doing for new management in the town for next year. And then finally, we have the North Carver Water District for well and infrastructure debt, FY21. This is $200,000. Historically, it's been $250,000. This year, we were able to have them reduce that down to $200,000. And I will say that we received a grant of $48,000 to buy a new generator. The generator that was originally built for the plant was a propane generator that would have, powered half the city of Plymouth, which unfortunately, being that big, it wasn't able to work properly. So we have purchased a new appropriate-sized generator. We have taken that generator, put it out on on an auction through municipal government. We had to get $25,000 out of that to break even. We were hoping to get $50,000, and through the great work of Dave Siegentoff, our director, I believe the amount was $63,000 that he received for that. So actually, that project is going to turn a net profit after the grant there that can go into the North Carver Water District Stabilization Fund. That'll also reduce down their operation costs and utility costs and allow them to better provide services that are in there. So with that, Mr. Chairman of both committees, those are the items for the $1.355 million. From there, I'm going to just talk about the next two items. And again, formatting may change on this, but let's go over the two items. Of the $1.26 million, the Finance Committee and the Capital Outlay Committee, through their special reserve fund that both committees have to approve, that was approved at town meeting in 2014, Article 15, is that both committees allocated, excuse me, out of that fund, $1.085 million to continue to move that project forward. The intent was, when that happened, and again, the intent is to move it back. This article is to move it back. We still have to work with DOR as to how we get it back there, so there'll be some logistics in that. But it's to put that $1.085 million back into the reserve fund that allows, with the checks and balances of the Finance Committee and the Capital Outlay Committee to move forward with that project. In addition to that, as we have stated from the beginning of the police station project, despite what others are saying, and anyone reading the warrants back at town meeting or reviewing the tapes, is that the commitment for the fire station was that the town would borrow $4.9 million. That's what we could afford within our borrowing cap. In addition to that, all additional expenses would come out of free cash or the capital outlay budget, so that we would not have to go back to the towns, so to speak, and tie that into an operating budget, which the debt service is tied into our operating budget. So again, as we have money available, and as we've done over the last 2 to 3 years, we're putting money into the police station account that, by all intents and purposes and review, is coming out very well and will be another great success to the town. So with that, this includes $177,000 for the police station building, including the furniture, fixture, and equipment, so that they can do the interior fit out of the building. Again, those two numbers come to $1.26 million. So again, as I disclosed at the beginning, this items I and J may have to be reformatted. The council may even split this article up into 2 articles. But what I'm asking you to do here is for the intent is to make sure that those monies are allocated, as designed here for items I and J. And everything A through H will be as written, and that does not have an issue with the way it's written right now.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Just a quick question on A for the special ed reserve.
Mm-hmm.
Correct me if I'm wrong, and I could be up on this, but I thought when we originally did this 2 years ago, we set it up, it was a $300,000 reserve fund, and then, so is this just bringing that reserve fund back up to its $300,000, or did they go through all $300,000?
I don't remember if it was exactly $300,000. I know it was a couple $100,000, but it might have been $300,000, so I can't answer that definitively. But I think you're close. So this helps bring it back up. This is what we could afford out of free cash this year. So that's why we are trying to bring it up. I don't think it's going to bring it all the way up to $300,000, but it does bring it up to some of the money that they had expended. They do run all those expenses through the finance director and myself.
Yep.
So any of those expenses, through the collaborative relationship we have with the school, is we approve those, and they have to demonstrate how their population has changed from what the original budget was in order to qualify to use those funds.
So yeah, basically, we're just giving them a little more wiggle room again, a bit of more of a safety net, just.
Yes, we're building it back up.
Yep.
So that we have that flexibility, and the intent of the article always stays there.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Finance Committee?
I make a motion to recommend Article 3.
I second.
Motion made and seconded to recommend Article 3. Any further discussion?
I had through you, Mr. Chair, I had a question on our letter G, the Town Hall Transitional Assistance and Restructuring, specifically better understanding what exactly that's used for. It's $100,000, it's a sizable amount.
That, I believe, is in anticipation of the fact that we're going to be conducting a search for a new town administrator, and it makes monies available for that search and payment of that individual.
Should we be voting on these separately, A, through J, or do we just vote on them?
That's the pleasure of your board.
If there's any that you particularly want to call out, you can do it individually. It's really up to the boards as to how to do it. We put them like this so that if there's a particular issue, like at a particular town meeting, there was an one item that someone can vote that separately. Ideally, it's up to town meeting when we get there. If town meeting is comfortable, you vote it A through J. If somebody has an issue with, I'm just going to pick something, the item E, the operation of the field maintenance, then they could ask to vote that separately. So it's really up to the board. If anyone sees an issue with any of those, feel free to call it out. If not, vote them as a group.
It's the pleasure.
Just to clarify, I don't want to, just that transitional assistance, that is for the consultants to help find a new town administrator, or is that for the consulting fees for somebody like Michael to be a consultant for the town?
So I think to answer that is that it's yet to be defined. Here's what I will say, is that my salary, as per the extension of the contract, the adjustment of contract, is already budgeted in the budget in our straight operations. So when the board brings somebody else on, is that they need to have some funding to be able to pay for that individual. So this would be a start of paying for that individual to figure out how to identify that either as a transitional or full-time person for that. My services are covered in the budget already. So this would be for somebody, not me, somebody doing something in my role, full, temporary or permanent.
So it's an additional cost to the town as a result of the vote that was taken tonight?
Correct.
Correct.
The vote was taken tonight, right? Because I'm surprised to see this in here.
Well, I think it's been under discussion for a while, so I think it was placed in there in anticipation. If nothing had happened, it would have been removed.
So to address that is that the board did have an executive session 2 weeks ago about, and started this discussion. So it has been in the works. I was asked to look at, seeing if there was some money to make sure the town had extra money in the future to satisfy this. So this is where we were able to put it into, because again, it does fit into a one-time category because it's a one-time use for that particular year, and that's where it was budgeted.
How did we arrive at the figure?
It's probably not scientific.
Yes.
It's probably based on when we might bring someone on board, and
actually, it was scientific. I can answer that question. Is that, as I mentioned, we received a $99,000 grant. So the $576,000 number was $99,000 more. We received the grant. We reduced that number down because of the grant. $99,000 which was left in the number. We don't know if the $99,000 is the right number or wrong number. That's just what was available in free cash. Should they need additional money, and the money's unavailable in the budget, they'll have to go to the finance committee to look at your reserve fund transfer should they need something.
And so if this is not approved at town meeting, this specific line item at town meeting is not approved, the only funding mechanism would then be to come back after town meeting and get approval from FinCom and/or the select board to fund it. Is that correct?
If that happened, yes.
Do you want to take this article up separately, Adam? Do you want us to vote on that one particular item? We can certainly do that. We can vote no. We can vote however you want to vote on that.
My personal preference would be, so I mean, I could make a motion.
You absolutely can.
Make a motion to you, Mr. Chair, to take item G out of consideration with the other line items and consider it as a separate line item.
That needs a second. That's made and seconded. All those in favor of that?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so we're going to take A, B, C, D E.
Approved everything but G.
There you go.
But we're going to vote on everything except for G.
Everything except G, and then we'll vote on G
as a
separate.
separate item.
So, now I would need a motion for that. You want to make that?
Sure, I will make a motion to vote on line items A, B, C, D, E, F, and H only.
I need a second.
Second.
A motion made and seconded to vote on line items A, B, C, D, E, F, and H. Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. So that's 10-0. A, B, C, D, E, F, and H. Now we need a motion to deal with G.
I make a...
Go ahead, no, go ahead. He wanted to break it up.
Go ahead.
I make a motion to recommend
G.
G to the town meeting. Second?
I don't have a second.
So just to confirm, this gets pulled out as its own?
Yes.
Yeah, we're going to vote on this separately.
Okay.
And now it has a second. Marie, you seconded it? So that opens it for discussion. Any discussion on this from what Adam said? Go ahead.
My concern is I'd like to revisit this when it's necessary, as opposed to approving a blanket line item of $99,000, not knowing whether it's needed, not knowing whether it's accurate. I'd rather revisit this if and when it's needed and make a recommendation at that time to fund it.
Anyone else?
I do have to say, I mean, I agree. I mean, the 99,000, Michael, was just kind of what we had left. And so we're just kind of throwing a number because it's what we had left.
Correct.
Without any real information. So I do agree with Adam.
Yeah, I agree.
If I could, what I would just say is that by not voting this, then that means the 99,000 can only be done at a future town meeting by town meeting. So you'd have to have another town meeting to vote the 99,000 out. The other option would be is that you allocate this money, to the finance committee or with the approval of the finance committee, and, whether that gets passed or not, at least it's available somewhere. I'm only trying to guide people not to make sure you have it available through some mechanism, even if it's a two-step mechanism, versus having to call another town meeting for the $99,000.
My only concern is that we're going to take this 99,000 and go crazy with outside headhunters. That, I mean, I don't want to be disrespectful to the Collins Center, but they did a lousy job in the police station, so now we're going to hire them back in to go find a town administrator. I don't get that.
So if I could just say, the $99,000, I think the intent of that is for salary of, again, either on an interim or full-time basis for someone in my title. There may be a $10,000 fee plus or minus for the consultant to do work, but I think that number can come out of the selectman's existing budget. So I think the intent here is this $99,000 is available for salary of someone to fill my role. Now, you could be paying that person as a consultant, or you could be paying them as a full-time employee, depending upon if it's the interim or the full term. So, but I would look at this as the actual salary of somebody versus the consultant. I wouldn't even talk about the consultant piece, because that can be done in the selectman's existing budget.
Okay.
Mr. Chair? Alan?
Sarah?
If I may, thank you. I just wanted to point out that the Collins Center is the organization that got us our interim TA before, and that was part of the search process that produced Michael as well. Just letting you know.
And again, I can't speak for what the board's going to end up doing, but the likelihood is we're going to go for an interim town administrator, and there is no charge from the Collins Center for hiring an interim.
Well, we also go up a few articles here, and that may change how you go about looking for a new town administrator, depending upon what you do with that article, so.
If there is an interim town administrator, are we paying 2 town administrators at the same time?
We would be paying Michael to continue for 2 years as a consultant, and then we'd be paying, but he'd be acting as an executive consultant, not as town administrator any longer.
But in essence, what you're saying, I guess this is going to have to come out anyway. We're going to pay him his contract for the next 2 years.
That's correct.
So you're going to collect your contract. You have a 4-year contract. You've agreed to a 2-year contract. And we're going to pay you that 2-year contract over the next 2 years. Name you a consultant. You will no longer be town administrator, but we're still going to pay you the contract for 2 years. So everything we do with the new guy has to be over and above your existing contract for 2 years.
That's correct.
Then I would like to see what Adam's proposing. I'd like to see this money approved and set into an account that has a little bit more FinCom oversight, with no disrespect to the select board.
So I guess you need to reword the motion.
Do you object to that?
I don't, that's
Do you
exactly
object to
what I'm-
that?
No.
Okay, do we have I have to ask let me ask the brains of the outfit. We have an account we can put this in?
It would be, what you would do is with each of these items, you would create a separate article line, so it would be a standalone, it won't close out at the end of the year, it'll just carry over from year to year.
Okay.
But it would be segregated.
Okay.
So what you would do is I would suggest something similar to what the finance and the capital outlay do with the capital outlay reserve, is that this Article G would be subject to approval of the Select Board and FinCom. Is that what I'm hearing people want to do?
Well, FinCom and then Select Board.
Both votes. You need 2 votes. You guys can haggle over who goes first.
We'll flip.
I mean, just to get consensus, is that what people are
Yeah.
saying?
Yes.
'Cause
That's what I think my committee is asking for.
I guess I'll ask the select board, as long as it's out there, is everyone comfortable on our side with that?
I have no problem with them being the head honchos
I
for
mean,
this.
it'll be a joint
Really don't.
decision between the 2 boards.
I just think it gives transparency and it makes everybody feel a little bit better, that's all. And not because, just because now we're 15.
Okay.
Which I think, is a little bit better in the optics and transparency.
And it's a lot of money. We spent 6 hours in this room haggling over a school committee budget for $40,000 for a part-time art teacher. This is more than twice that. So it's a considerable amount of money, and for something that I walked into the room tonight and was completely caught off guard by,
Yeah, me
I'm
too.
just not comfortable approving a $100,000 expenditure or recommending a $100,000 expense for something that wasn't budgeted for, is an excess cost to the town and to the taxpayers in town. And I haven't even had time to really process it.
I mean, the only thing I'd say is that if it ends up not getting funded, then we won't have anyone in that position.
That's the risk we take.
But that decision's already been made, right? So, as a taxpayer, I see a $22,000 rec budget, right? And I see a $99,000 budget. Again, that's just a number right now. But we don't know why that decision was made. We're not part of that discussion, but it's that.
I understand what you're...
Mr. Chairman, I fully support what the Finance Committee is proposing.
Yeah, I support it. I support it too.
I think there's a little emotional background to it tonight also. I think everybody on my committee you guys had the luxury of seeing this coming. And all we've really had is a little bit of very, very quiet, subtle, something may be up, we don't know. And so I think that my committee's really kind of blown away.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chair, we weren't allowed to talk about it.
Oh, no,
until
I understand.
Just after tonight's executive session.
And I respect that, and I admire that, because it is executive session, and I spent the whole day today with Mark Townsend, God bless him. You couldn't get a squeak out of this guy with an oil can. I mean, it's crazy. The man will not open his mouth, no matter what. And so, my hat's off to that, and that just goes to the integrity of it. Which is why we've only heard such little tiny, fly-in-the-wall stuff, which I'm sure is coming out of nowhere. But I'm willing to bet that my committee's shocked tonight. I don't think we were planning on having this be the result. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the town administrator, and this was something we weren't planning on. Pat? You have to speak up. There's no mic down there. Obviously, mine works well.
I think in light of decisions already made tonight, and the fact that the current town administrator is going to still get 2 years' pay as it's budgeted, you need something. $99,000 is something. Now, what happens when, within that two-year structure, you hire another full-time town administrator? Where's that money coming from?
Have to come out of future budgets.
Well, but it's not part of this budget.
Nope.
And it could happen within the confines of this fiscal year. So where's that money coming from?
Do you mean if this doesn't get approved, this
No, I mean,
G?
if you take the 99,000 and put some qualifications on it, which is fine, I'm supportive of that. But 6 months down the road, you hire a full-time town administrator who needs a full-time salary. Plus, you're already paying a full-time salary. Where's that second one coming from?
Well, the budget will have to be analyzed and the money found at that time. Or we won't hire a second, a new town administrator.
That's just my point.
I mean, these sort of situations happen with many towns all the time. It's not like this is the first time a town has gone through something like this.
You get the $99,000, and I can see several purposes for that. And I think it's needed in light of the decisions that have been made. Some qualifications have to be put on it, but at the same time, again, what about when you hire another full-time town administrator and maybe the 99,000 is not spent by then, so you can use some of it? Where's the balance of that next full-time salary coming from? If it's another fiscal year, that's fine, it can be voted in. But what about if it's the one we're talking about?
That's a good question.
We're going to have to make modifications, we're going to have to make changes, we'll have to find the money somewhere. This,
Yeah.
And Pat, it could be, and I'm not speaking for the board, this is just a hypothetical, that the interim stays until the next budget, the next town meeting. I mean, we just don't know.
Well,
So-
no, we don't know.
And that's no benefits, that's no health care,
All I'm saying
nothing.
is the $99,000 has a price, absolutely, and it's needed under the circumstances. But it could be a whole lot more than $99,000. It's needed.
You're absolutely
And
right.
again,
Unfortunately, actions have consequences, so it's something the town will have to deal with.
That's right.
Yeah, and just, again, without going into great detail, just believe me that that was part of the discussion that this board had in arriving at the decisions we arrived at.
So, Mr. Chairman, it sounds like what we need is an amendment to modify G to include, it needs to be approved by both the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen, in whatever order you choose to put it in.
I don't care.
Wouldn't that have to be a whole separate article then?
No, it can be put in there, we can just write that in the parentheses, just
Okay.
that it's, subject to approval of Select Board, and Board of Selectmen will have legal write that up. But the intent of G, when you vote G at 99,000, is that it takes more than one body to spend G.
I'd rather not have that as a subset. I'd rather have that, if it's going to be including both bodies and we're going to have restrictions on that, I like to see that just simply make its own article.
We can do that, we can just
I
pull
think
that
that
out. if that's what
simplifies
we
it
want
at
to do,
town
and have
meeting.
a separate article. It's easy enough to do.
All right, why don't we get that drawn up,
So-
and at our next meeting on the 17th, we can take that into account.
We can do it right now?
Can we include the capital outlay committee on that? Just simply because they deal with, large amounts of money?
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, capital outlay, this falls more under an operational
No, I
as
understand.
opposed to a
Just asking,
capital
because
outlay.
it is
So,
another
Excuse me,
financial-
Bob?
I have no problem if you guys want to draw up something of limitations for how the money's spent or whatnot.
I don't think we need to
For
do that. I don't like, and I think neither does Adam, I don't think we want to tie your hands up. I think we just want to make sure that the process stays open and we're informed in it. FinCom obviously is much more involved this past couple of years than they have been in years past. And I think that now we have a lot of interest in FinCom. So I'd like to just see, we're not gonna restrict and tie your hands behind your back. I just think we want a little bit of oversight, a little bit of inclusion, because it is a financial thing. And like Pat said, if we find the next guy who's perfect and, this is what it's going to take to get him on a permanent basis and this is what you want, then you're going to need a lot of cooperation from FinCom to make that happen. And there may be ways we can make that happen without having to have a special town meeting and without having to have a lot of other stuff happen. If there's money funded in budgets someplace, we can we can maneuver around and take, we can work with. So nobody wants to see all of these things succeed more than we do. But by the same token, I know that the vast bulk of my committee doesn't want to see the budget run off the tracks either. So, we're concerned about that. And it is a big deal if we're going to be paying what some in this town view as an exorbitant amount of money, and then to throw this in and as a temporary basis for whether it's consulting or however we put the fancy words to it, it's still another $100,000. So I get what he's saying. I think we can just do a motion to break this out into its own article that is then administered and approved, set in a separate account, and is administered and approved by a joint.
I'm just not sure without the exact wording and in front of us that we can vote it tonight. I think we understand what we want to do. And
You could vote that and give it to town council. I mean, it's just going to take a joint vote of the finance committee and the board of selectmen. Things like this have been done before. It's you're voting that amount for this purpose, and the only restriction on it.
I'm comfortable with that if you want to do it.
Because that gets it out of, that allows us to be all set on the other side of it and just.
Yeah, I just think any department head that walked in here and said, I need $99,000 for something that that I'm gonna need, but I don't know exactly what I'm gonna need, and I don't know how much it's gonna cost.
Oh, we did
and
this.
I don't know what model it's gonna be, but I need $99,000 in case I wanna buy it. I think anybody that walked in to have that discussion, certainly wouldn't be highlighted in an audit report as a positive for the town. I don't think it's a positive reflection.
If I may, Mr. Chair, that's not exactly what is being said here tonight. I think Mr. Malinowski was pretty clear that it's not going to be used on him, and he made it pretty clear what it was going to be used on.
It would be used on a replacement, but we're not sure exactly who that replacement's going to be, what they're going to cost,
Exactly right.
when they're going to start, how long they're going to be working, how many hours they're going to be working. We don't have any framework whatsoever for what this $99,000 is going to be spent on. And we're being asked to recommend to town meeting a $99,000 expenditure, and we have no idea what that is going to look like.
And that
It's a rubber stamp.
And it was just $99,000 that was just left. It was because it was left.
Right, it was not scientific.
Right.
And Mr. Chairman, I'd love for someone to Adam's point, I'd love for someone to give me a $99,000 check and say, whatever you come up with. No, I agree entirely of having the oversight.
I don't think our board has any objections to doing this.
I think Alan made a motion,
Well, actually, Adam didn't. Kate did. So why don't you withdraw the motion? We have a motion in a second. Withdraw that first.
I withdraw the motion.
This makes it
for
easy to start
G.
over.
Now Adam made the motion.
Or Kate.
Okay.
Go ahead, Adam.
So my motion is to take line item G as a separate article in the warrant to be approved at town meeting, but then requires a joint vote from the FinCom and the Select Board to approve the expenditure for $99,000 as needed.
Second.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that money to be put in a separate account?
Yes.
It always is.
Just to make sure.
Yeah, each article, I guess, gets its own.
Bob, each one of these is always a separate account, A through J. It's always a separate account.
All right, so the motion before FinCom is to take item G, create a separate article for that expenditure, and that will be administered by a joint cooperative vote by the Select Board and the Finance Committee, and that it will sit in its own separate account until such time as it's needed. And that has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's 10-0.
Mr. Chairman.
Approved.
Sir.
I move that the Select Board approve from Article 2, Article 3, Sections A, B, C, D, E, F, and H.
Second. Further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we take out Section G as a separate article, said funds to be having to be voted on by the Finance Committee and the Select Board and maintained in a separate account.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Perfect.
Alan, you need one more motion, and that's for I and J. and that with the acknowledgement that town council may rewrite I and J.
Did you guys vote I and J?
No, we did not.
Well, actually, there was.
They did it.
Yeah,
No,
we
they
did,
didn't.
actually. There was discussion, I and J. We did have some ideas about it. Michael brought it before us at a previous FinCom meeting, so we had obviously approved the $1,085,000 because capital outlay approved it, and then we approved it. And this is to go back in. So the motion for us would be in order to approve I and J when it's finally determined, subject to towns and the state, DOR recertifying that money. So I would take that motion.
I make a motion to recommend I and J from Article 3 pending council's wording and free cash certification.
Motion made and seconded. George Callahan seconded that. Elaine, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That takes care of the free cash certification number 2.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Select Board recommend from Article 3, Sections I and J, subject to Town Council, DOR, and the other state agencies that have to certify this, get it certified.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
This is getting like the real town meeting. We're at Article 4, and it's, we're not going to be overnight tonight, are we?
So
We have reserved rooms if necessary.
Thank you.
Can I ask, Mr. Chair, through you, is it possible to take these articles out of order?
Sure, if that's...
Only because in the interest of the folks that are in the back of the room from Wenham Shores, it doesn't make sense to have them wait until Article 29.
I think that's an excellent...
What's the matter? You don't like it here?
Running for anything.
They love town government in action, but I'm sure they have other things to do.
I second it.
So what is it, Article 29? Is that what I'm hearing?
Is it 28 also?
No, it's just 29. Article 29
Is there a motion to move to Article, actually, I don't...
I'll make a motion, we move to Article 29.
Further discussion, those for aye, those opposed, the ayes have it.
All right, Article 29 is to transfer land that's currently in the ownership of the treasurer collector on Wenham Shores, specifically map 42, lot 73, known as Recreation Area, which we've had several public meetings on. Mark Townsend's been involved in all of those. That on some of these residents' deeds, they're all written differently. Says that they have some type of rights to the land. Again, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. We know that the intent of the board was to find a way to secure this. So this was pulled out of the auction because this property was actually owned by the treasurer collector through a previous tax title. What this article does is it does transfer to Fish and Wildlife so that it does remain in conservation protection. The only way to change this would be to go to the state legislature, so it does give a perpetual use to that. And that's what the intent of the article is.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Select Board recommend Article 29.
Second.
Further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, just a couple of minor changes. Since the property was taken out of the auction, I think we should cut the phrase "for purposes of sale at auction," and then there's two to these. So maybe just that phrase.
There's two Bs?
No, it says to the select board.
Yep, got it.
Oh, to the, okay.
Michael's got it. And then on the second line, Michael, there's an S on parcel, because originally there were two parcels in
Yep,
this.
parcel located at, yep.
Yep, okay, and that was it.
Same motion with amendments.
Second.
Second, further discussion. Being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. Over to you, FinCom.
I don't see where FinCom has an involvement in this.
It is transfer of town property, so you're taking an asset that you could have auctioned off, even though there's issues with litigation here, not litigation, but ownership from a recreation piece, and you're now, in essence, declaring it's always going to be in recreation purposes in perpetuity.
Conservation.
Conservation.
Well, I wasn't aware that conservation had control of property in the town.
Oh, yeah.
We do?
This isn't conservation, this is going to Fish and Wildlife.
Yeah, Fish and Wildlife.
Yes, but basically, it's an asset that you could sell, if it had didn't have a cloudy title. And now you're taking that asset and you're putting it into permanent conservation restriction through Fish and Wildlife. So from that standpoint, it is subject to Concom because, again, it's an asset, as you're saying. There's no longer an asset.
And Alan, I believe the neighbors are going to come to your board, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, to talk about this.
Was this that Connor lot that lets you get down to the water?
Yes.
It's the boat ramp. That the one that was kind of weird and
Yes.
they decided they couldn't sell it because in order to get, for your beach rights, you had to go through that piece of property? Is that the one?
That's the one. Yep.
For the record, the chairman of the FinCom has no problem with this motion. So anybody wants to make that motion,
I
I'm
make
good
a
with it.
motion to recommend Article 29 with the correction changes.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to what she said. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. Chairman, for the record, there is another parcel that's a small little island that's out there that's non-buildable. Unfortunately, we do not have a easy mechanism for transferring that because it's still stuck in land of low value. We did pull that from the auction, so therefore we have to go back and figure out what the proper mechanism is to do that. If we put it back out at auction, we would just have to make sure there's no bidders. If there's no bidders, then we can come back through this process. But just to be safe, at the last auction, we pulled it. We'll be looking at a different way of doing that, which may be to put some very, very, very outrageous number on it, so there will be no bidders. And then, since there's no bidders, then the town can do something after it. Bureaucracy. But no one can develop the islands in the meantime. It stays there.
All right, so we will come back. So thank you all. If you're
Yes.
welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for bumping us along.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Killing our rating.
Still gotta go at town meeting, you know. Don't get too cocky now. You never know what town meeting will do.
We'll save this one for last at town meeting.
Yeah, at the last minute.
All right.
So,
we will-
Mr. Chairman, Article 4 is the same article that we've had for the last 3 years. It's broken down into 3 parts. Each part can be voted individually. This is Article 4. Part A is the townwide organizational chart, wage and pay scale, a wage and salary classification plan for elected and non-elected or non-union employees, which are in Appendix A, B, C, and D, and cross off and creation of middle high school stabilization fund. So that no longer exists there. The Senate should end when we get down into Part A, just after the Appendix C. So that's Part A. Both boards have already approved the organizational plan, and so that's that. Part B.
Except, I think I'd like to see on Part A, just because I know there's a buzz out there, that perhaps we break down Part A so that we vote on the organizational chart separately from wage and salary and pay scale.
Yes, I agree. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So, on Part A, point 1.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm wondering even whether it makes sense to break the 2 organizational charts in half, because there was a finance portion and a community living portion.
Yes.
And I think it may be, and I think our board had a vote of 4-1 on one and 3-2 on the other, so I think it's worthwhile to have them divided up, so maybe A1 and A2 for the organizational chart. I think we're okay on wage and salary, pay scale, and so forth.
So what we will do is we will have Part A1 will be,
finance reorg?
We'll figure this out.
Part A1A,
Well, except we're gonna vote on it, so we
A1B.
need to.
So we need the whole organizational chart, but then you want to break it up into 2 sections, so we're going to need.
I think we
3 votes.
voted at 2 separate sections.
We
We
did.
voted for finance and we voted for community living.
Well, then that just goes into this.
Right.
So,
But they want to separate it, so it'd be an A1A, an A1B, and then an A2,
which would cover everything.
would
Well,
cover everything else.
actually, I think that the way I'm seeing it is, we did vote for the community living and the finance, but I'm talking about a vote for the rest of the organizational chart as a whole. So it's probably A1, 2, and 3.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
All right.
What's the third part?
It's all the rest of the townwide,
So-
all the rest of the townwide
Which is
reorganization
just a standard organization.
that we have now, yes.
Yeah, okay.
let me describe it this way, is we have the org chart. That's a vote, but we're not taking that vote yet until we vote A and B. Depending upon what happens to A and B will impact the whole org chart.
And then we take a vote on the org chart as a whole. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
All right, so for everybody's notes, here's how we're going to do this. Put your seatbelts on. Okay, so for A1 is going to be Finance Department. A2 is going to be for Community Living.
Reorg.
And 3 is going to be for the org chart.
Okay.
Depending upon what happens for vote A1 or A2, that could affect A3, which is the total org chart.
But basically, when we get to A3, it'll be whatever we decided on A1 and 2, left, and everything else left over.
Right, but you still got to have a vote because there's all the other departments that we haven't even
Right,
talked about.
that's what I'm saying, yes. Okay.
So then I'm just going to put this down as A4 will be the, can we do the wage and salary? Well, you know what, the wage and salary and the classification plan, that's going to be whatever the final org chart is. Like, vote that as one time.
No, I think it should
All right,
be a separate.
we're going to have 5 votes.
Okay.
All right, A is going to have 5 parts. Part 4 is going to be the wage and salary pay scale,
Okay.
which actually would not be impacted whether this changes. But then the wage and salary classification plan would be A5.
Okay.
That could change based upon A1 and A2. Everybody got that?
Sure.
And
All right.
who's on first?
All right. So
We're overcomplicating the thing, to be honest with you, but okay.
Well,
So before we
I just anticipating, we can do this now, or we can spend an hour at town meeting.
We're gonna spend an hour at town meeting anyway,
Exactly,
so.
but we're gonna fight about just breaking it out at town meeting. I think we're much better off
Yeah,
breaking it out
doing it
now.
now.
Yeah,
I agree.
it'll go quicker, I think.
So when you look at Appendix A will have the Finance Committee, Community Living, and then org chart. It'll have 3 pages to it.
Finance Committee,
Finance
Finance Department.
Department.
Restructuring the Finance Department. So it'll have 3 pages to Appendix A. And I think with that, we can keep some order to it. So before we even get to Part B, since we've just talked about this ad nauseum, why don't we move forward with voting A1? No, we've already, actually, I take that back. Everybody's voted we've all voted this, so really what you're voting right now is for Part A, you're voting the structure of A1 through 5.
Right, but I just still have a question, Michael, because to my way of reading this, you could have, this Part A could have a Part 2, which is all the rest of it, the wage and salary, the classification plan, all that
That's A3, that's A4.
and A5. Okay.
Right. So that's what A4 and
Right.
5 would be.
Right.
Let me just ask the board, I know we voted on this before, was there an interest on the select board to re-vote these?
Yes.
A1, 2, and 3, even though we already did it at a prior meeting?
Can I just bring everybody's attention, this document right here, it's called Appendix B. Appendix B is going to be A4, okay? Appendix 5 is going to, I'm sorry, Appendix C is going to be A5. Does that make sense, Sarah?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so A1 is the finance reorg, which the select board voted on before.
Right, and we voted on it also.
And I think we'll just take another revote. So what's the pleasure of the board on the finance reorg?
Before we do that, can we have some discussion here? Because to me, I think it's kind of ridiculous so you want us to vote on 5 As. We've already decided that this is what the structure's going to be, so instead of voting on each section, let's just vote on the structure and have town meeting have at it.
Well, no, I think the town meeting looks for a little guidance from the FinCom.
But I think the town meeting, I think if we vote just to break it out, approve the entire overall piece, and then just have it broken out by council, and that's how it gets presented, what's the difference?
Yeah,
mean,
well,
we don't have to
Justin, I know in our
argue
case,
multiple vote
we had a
tonight.
3-2 vote on the community living and a 4-1 vote on.
But it was still a majority. And we had the
Yeah,
same
but
thing happen on
I
our
think
side.
a lot of people would appreciate the transparency of breaking all this out this way.
I think it's a good idea to break it out, don't misunderstand me. I think it's just, we don't have to break it all out and vote individually again on
We
something
don't
we've
have to, I
already
mean,
voted on.
I don't mind doing it, but it's up to what the select board wants to
I
do.
think the argument should be to break it out, and that's the vote, is to break it out, because we've already approved it. So make it easy, but absolutely should break it apart for town meeting, because if we don't, they're gonna.
Well, let's just vote that we're going to break it out.
I make a motion, we break out the town organization chart.
Second.
All right, basically, the entire article is reorganized as described.
A1 through
Yes.
5, Bob.
Yes, please. A1 through A5.
There a second?
I seconded it.
Okay, further discussion?
So we're not going to vote on A1, A2, A3?
Well, we may, but right now, we're just approving the new order.
You're voting on A1 through 5.
We're voting on restructuring in this manner. We're not voting to approve or not approve A1.
Just voting to separate it out.
Voting to separate it out, yes.
All right.
Is there a motion made and seconded for discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Now we've broken it out. Now my question to the board is, did you want to revote the sections?
Do you want FinCom to
Then that's up to you. You
chime
can,
in on breaking it out, or do you?
No, let
We
the
already
select,
voted.
they are in charge of the warrant structure.
Okay.
You're in charge of content. Well, you're both in charge of content, but they're in charge.
I mean, you can argue that you've already voted on all the separate pieces, and you're just going to let your vote stand as unanimous on all 5 sections if you want to.
Everybody go with that?
Yeah.
Yep.
You got it.
Okay.
A1 through A through.
What's the pleasure of the select board? Do you want to vote the individual sections, or do you want to let our prior vote stand?
I let our prior vote stand.
I'm fine with
Okay.
that.
Prior vote stand.
All right, and just
I
to
think
read.
that's fine.
So the FinCom, the finance portion was 4-1, community living was 3-2, and then,
Well, except we didn't take a vote then on the overall org.
So,
Well, which we
Sarah's
can't-
correct. Let's go to Appendix B. Appendix B is the wage scale with the 3% increase. So that doesn't matter what department you're in. So let's take a quick vote. You
Yep.
can do
I
it.
move we approve the pay scale.
Second.
further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it.
Then Article.
I don't think we did either.
You did in the whole thing with the vote because you approved the 3%.
Okay.
And you approved the positions and the funding.
Well, I know we approved the positions, and I know we were behind 3%.
Now, the next thing is Appendix C, which gives the new job titles, is where there's some concern to members of the board, so that's going to be a split vote. Take a vote on Appendix C, which is A5.
But, and what does it represent?
It's the classification plan, wage and salary classification plan.
Okay.
Now,
Appendix
what
C.
you could really do is just not take a vote on that, because whatever the org chart is, that gets voted on, that's going to be
Yeah, that's
that
probably
piece.
the best.
All right,
Yeah.
So
so
don't
no,
even take a vote on
so
it.
no action on that,
No action on
and we're
A5.
letting everything else stand, so we're done with this article.
No.
No, you're done with A.
Nice try.
Sorry, we're done with A.
All right, B. B is the dollar amounts that's tied into the budget. Meg, do you want to just, I'm turning this over to Meg, of course. Go ahead.
You know what?
Talk about B.
Michael, can I just interrupt you real quick?
Yep.
So in the informational summary there,
Yep.
if you could just put, change how we did it when it's describing Part A, just for the...
Yes, informational summary be completely rewritten
Okay. Thank
to
you.
accommodate this.
Yep.
What I will say is, whatever gets changed with A1, A2, A3, the budget numbers are not going to significantly change. So you can vote these numbers, we'll figure out a way of making that work. Whether or not you move a position here, move a position there, because those changes were kind of net neutral, the reorganization piece. So you don't have to revote these numbers that are here, no matter what version of the finance reorg or the community living you choose to do. Meg, you're up.
Okay, so this Part B is essentially the budget for FY 2021. And what this does is the way this is broken out is ties directly back to our revenue forecast, because on our revenue forecast, we project our revenues, and then we have expenses that we have to take right off the top, and then we have our town school share. So if you look at the town-wide shared budget, that is the sum of the expenses that are shared on the revenue forecast, which are transfers, the excluded debt for the elementary school, the Old Colony VOTAC, those types of items. If you were to take the revenue forecast, you could trace it right back to those shared expenses. The general government budget, that is town side. And that total of $10,542,346 is the town's, ties right back to the town's share of the budget on the revenue forecast. The $953,635, those are items that are handled on the town side but have an outside funding source, such as the ambulance fund. It also includes a portion.
Excuse me, Meg.
Yeah.
Just, Meg is talking about, in the back of your document, you'll have like 4 pages that look like this. This is what's in the exhibit Appendix E, but when you sum the bottom of the sums of each one of these categories, these are the numbers that she's talking about. The FinCom has already approved the detail, which goes into the exhibit. This is the rolled up numbers that Meg's talking about that are in there. So that's the cross-reference, again, how we do it every year.
Can I ask one quick question? We've been seeing budget previews basically since December.
Yep.
At various times. Are these numbers significantly changed from what has been presented to us through that period of time? I mean, because we've sat and walked through the budget a couple of times, and it's been sent out to us. So I just want to understand that what we're seeing here isn't something that's new.
Because we locked in a town school share quite a while ago on the revenue forecast, and these numbers in this article tie back to those revenue forecast numbers.
I mean, I know I've got budget sheets going from to December, and you're saying essentially they match up with this.
That's correct. And the $24.237 million is the budget, school budget number. They've had that since whatever it is, November, December. And that's the number they voted on last week, which is in here.
Okay.
Yeah, because the document that Michael was pointing to, that is just the town side budgets that the Finance Committee has, or that have been presentations for that. The $953,635, as I said before, that's the ambulance indirect costs. They're funded separately outside of raise and appropriate. So we break it out there because that won't tie back to the revenue forecast. Then the $24,237,099, that's the school share from the revenue forecast. And then Part C is for the enterprise funds. North Carver Water District, that actually is funded, that is partially from its own receipts, but then there's also $200,000 that comes from free cash. So the two together combined for the North Carver Water District budget. Every year, what we do is if there are any prepayments on betterments for the North Carver Water District, we transfer that to Water Betterment Stabilization Fund, because the DOR mandates that any prepayments have to be segregated to pay down future debt for the district. So that's what that $4,452 is. And the last item is for Cranberry Village, $35,099. That's their operating budget for FY21.
I guess we'll take it Part B and then vote on Part C.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, before we do, I noticed down on the majority vote required towards the end of that article, it says Parts B through D, and I only see B and C.
Yeah, we gotta add that. Yeah. That was from last year because there were different votes from the.
So we're getting rid of D.
D was with the revolving funds, but because we didn't change thresholds on revolving funds, we don't need to include it in the warrant this year.
In that case, Mr. Chairman, I move the board to recommend Article 4, Part B, as outlined in the warrant.
Second.
Further discussion?
I have a question, kind of not particularly to this, but on two things that, with the North Carver Water District, the solar project.
That's in C.
That'll be in C.
Oh, that's C? So we're doing B now?
Yep.
What about the $500,000 that was got in from the sale of properties? Where did that money go into?
It's in limbo right now.
Okay.
Because that happened this year, so that goes on next year's free cash.
Okay.
So right now, it's stuck in an account. Not stuck in, it's put in an account earning interest.
Okay.
But it's nothing on here at all. You will not
All
see
right.
that right now.
All right.
Other discussion? Being none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And
And
FinCom's already voted this?
So FinCom, you guys already voted the budget articles in detail, so you can take another vote, but you've already voted these numbers in detail, but they're the same numbers, so whatever you choose to do is your.
I think it probably makes sense to have
State
it.
your vote. I've been told by the boss to state your vote.
Need a motion.
We don't have to motion it, just state what your vote was at your last, whenever you voted it.
Well, it could have been 9-0, could have been 8-0, we don't know, so we're just gonna do this now and make it easy.
Part C.
No, they haven't done B.
Part B.
Part B.
Part B.
I make a motion to recommend Part B of Article 4 for town meeting.
Second.
Motion made and seconded for recommend Article B of Part 4. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 10-0.
Oops, Alan.
I just voted with you, by the way. It's 11, I voted with you. I heard you say, all those in favor, and I voted. That's all I'm saying. I voted.
Mr. Chairman,
I voted twice on this article.
We need
And
a,
I'm voting on the next one you guys make, that's it. And we'll
we
be
need a
even.
recommendation from FinCom for Part C. We haven't heard from them on Part C yet.
oh,
Did you
all
vote
right.
Water yet? Oh,
No.
okay. Needed to vote Part C.
I make a recommendation for Article 4, Part C, to go to town meeting.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to recommend Article 4, Article 4, Part C, for town meeting. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the select board go ahead and recommend Article 4, Part C to town meeting.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. We go to Article 5.
Article 5 is our standard capital improvements article. This comes out of the capital improvements budget for a total of $4.263 million.
Can I ask again, we have previously seen all, gone
You
through
have
the capital
previously
budget?
seen all these things.
And I think we actually may have voted it at one point.
That is correct. The only
So-
thing that I will draw your attention to.
Are there any changes from what we've
There
seen?
is one change, and that is in K. We were able to move 300,000 of additional funds into K. So before you had it, it was 390, I believe. Now it's, or 490. Now it's 790. And those funds still come out of the capital reserve fund. That's the only change you've had. You've seen this. You've all voted this.
We did.
But I think we just need to record that vote.
All right, what's the pleasure
Mr.
of...
Chairman, I move that the select board recommend Article 5 as printed in the draft warrant.
Second. Further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
So now for the recommendation for the Finance Committee.
Yeah, this is- I'll take a motion on this.
I make a motion to recommend Article 5 to town meeting as written.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to recommend Article 5 as written with the adjustments to town meeting. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 10-0. See how easy it is on a $4-5 million deal? You know, it's always the 80-cent stuff that ties us up for 4 hours.
You're gonna
Article
love
6.
this. Article 6.
Do we have figures for that?
We do not have figures for this, but what I will say is these are statutorily required figures when they're inputted in there. We just need to have the Community Preservation Committee vote on that. They do not have any projects they're putting forward to town meeting. So what happens is with CPC funds is when they come in, we have to put, is it 15%, Meg, per category?
10%.
10%. So whatever the number is, if we get $100,000 from the state and from our own thing, it's going to be more than that. We'd have to put 10 in B, C, and D, and the remaining would just go into the unencumbered piece. But then we also put in 5% into the administrative piece. That's a standard process we do. This year, they don't have any projects. Last year's, remember, we funded the playground, I think it was, for $600,000. Now, out of this, they also pay their debt service that they have, which is also a statutorily requirement number when that comes out. So, in essence, we don't have the numbers here. It's a formula-driven thing, and it's whatever the money
You think we might have them for our meeting on the 17th?
Meg?
I mean, I have the numbers. If we're talking about like this, strictly.
I take that back. The finance director has the numbers with her. She's going to read them off.
We have to do our projection first, but I thought we were going to look at it. I didn't know if there are other.
Mr. Chairman, I move we table this article to our next meeting.
Second. Further discussion, those in favor, aye, they always have it.
All right. Article 7 is the creation of
Oh, excuse me, 1 second. Is the police chief waiting for something special?
Yes, we're getting to his article.
Well, could we move him up as well?
He wants to keep order, is what he's...
Well, I mean, chief, it's up to you. I mean...
What article is the chief
Is
interested
it Article 11?
Mr. Chairman, I move we
and
take...
he's also, Article 11, he's also got another one on the ice cream trucks.
So this was tabled?
And whatever else you got.
Mr. Chairman, I move we take the articles concerning the police chief out of order, whatever that may be.
All right, I'm going to just move through these quick. Article 11.
Hold on, motion to take,
You don't need a motion, you're good. Article 11.
I made a motion, it was seconded.
Oh,
That's all right,
take
get
the
over it.
vote.
all those in favor say
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. Why am I missing Article 11?
Article 11, page 17.
It's under part 2.
We'll start to accelerate things now because we're getting cranky and tired.
Page 17 is...
Not cranky.
Exactly.
Chairman, page 17, Article 11 is to exempt the deputy police chief from the police department out of civil service. This has been negotiated with the union.
As you guys were all aware of, and we
Yep.
approved it.
Make a motion that we approve,
Recommend.
recommend to
So
approve.
this is a
No,
home
just
rule
recommend.
petition. This is a
Recommend.
petition that goes to legislature, and then the legislature has the vote on it. So there's a motion and a second?
Bob made a motion to recommend, I second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it.
FinCom
For the
already
record.
voted. 10-0.
All right, moving forward from
Okay,
there.
Is there anything else for the chief?
Yes, there is. He gets to talk about ice cream trucks.
Where Article
Well,
is
he
that?
does-
Bring any samples,
So,
then we're not discussing ice cream truck.
what article is that?
I don't know.
The one for the fingerprinting.
Oh, is that almost?
Article 17.
Article
22.
17.
Okay, Article 17, page 22, thank you very much. All right, civil fingerprinting piece here. As the chief was just asked to come in case you have any questions, but in essence, the board has brought up the idea that they want us to fully enforce ice cream trucks and other type things. In order for them to do that, the police department needs approval to go forward and fingerprint people that aren't for criminal purposes. This allows them to do that for background checks as necessary. And I think there was some discussion on whether this is required for political solicitation. This does not cover that, right, Chief? It's for business type endeavors?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the select board go ahead and recommend Article 17 as printed in the town warrant.
Second.
Discussion.
Yes, could we hear from the chief?
Yeah, we don't get to weigh in on this at all. I had
And
questions.
just so you know, Chief, I don't know about the rest of the board, but I was surprised that this was sponsored by the Select Board, because although we had talked about ice cream trucks, this is such a huge article that makes me nervous.
Well, just for clarification, I mean, this is what Mr. Feldman wanted us to do, to make sure we were doing the ice cream trucks.
I didn't know
They
that.
can't do the ice cream trucks without this. So this is what town council says we have to do for him to do his job. Unless you don't want him to do background checks on ice cream trucks.
Let's just hear from the chief.
So I'm here to answer any questions. Again, as Mr. Malinowski just said, we had a woman come over that wanted to apply for an ice cream license by the state. That requires a permit filled out, the state permit that's filled out through the town. Our part of that is to do the fingerprint and background checks. State law does not allow the police department to take anyone's fingerprints unless they're been arrested for a crime and run them through the system. The only way to do that is to pass a bylaw that allows us to take somebody's fingerprints, send them off to the state police, and have that criminal background check completed. So to be able to move this forward, we need to pass this bylaw that allows us to do that. We took the sample bylaw from, and I have a packet here for everybody that I made for you if you'd like to, from the Mass Chiefs Association, same one that's used by Wareham and Plymouth and everyone else. It's pretty standard language. It's been looked at by town council as well. It includes the ice cream vendors, solicitors, Hackney, a bunch of different things that are in just about everybody's bylaw. And that would be the bylaw we would need to pass for the police department to be involved in the permitting process of somebody getting a license to sell ice cream or solicit. We don't currently have that. Our current bylaws only cover that somebody who's going to go door to door to conduct business, to conduct sales, would have to come to the police department and apply. They apply to us. I'm supposed to conduct an investigation into their morals and integrity and decide if they can go out there and do that, and then give them a permit. It's pretty standard, just bring them in, do that form, and send them out there. But we don't have the authorization to look at their criminal record for that. We just look in-house to see if there's anything if we had any problems, but we don't deny them on that. This bylaw would allow us to run fingerprints on them and find information about that. What started this all was somebody asking for a license to sell ice cream. State law prohibits us from giving that license to someone who's a convicted sex offender, and that's another reason why we have to run the fingerprints to get that information from the state. But we can't, the police department itself is barred from doing that unless we pass this bylaw. And I've got a package of information, if anybody wants it, I can leave it with you, as how this came about.
And how common is this in other communities?
Well, like I said, Wareham's doing it, Plymouth's doing it. I talked to Hanson, they currently aren't, but they don't have it, and I don't believe they have already applied for that particular license. And this year is the first time this has come up. We've never had to do this before. I mean, we've done the soliciting part of it, but we've never done the fingerprint check on them. And we don't have to change the bylaw for soliciting. We don't have to do that, but this bylaw allows us to send the fingerprints out if we choose to do that. Specifically for the ice cream one, we have to do that. We have to. The ice cream permit requires them to have a fingerprint background check done, and this bylaw allows that to happen.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Just quick, there's a $100 fee for this, that covers all the expenses for the police doing this?
Yes, well, part of that, what the law states is, and I'm going to copy that if you'd like it, but what the law states is a part of it goes to the state police identification section. I believe it's $30, and the remainder can stay with the town. We picked $100, that's what Wareham is using, and so that $70 would stay with the town. I believe it would go into the general fund. I don't think it comes into my budget. It's supposed to be documented, used to support the expenses of the police department, but we've got to create an actual permit, and I've got a blank one if you guys want to see that, with a picture on it and signed off on it for them to carry. So there's going to be some expense to that, yes.
Thank you very much, Chief.
You're welcome.
Further discussion? Being none, motion's made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Anything else for the chief?
Thank you. Take me out of order, everyone. Have a good rest of the
You're
night.
still welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you'd like.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Did the FinCom, you all set in this?
Well, dude, we're not included in part of that.
Okay.
Even though there is money involved in financial responsibilities, but we'll waive off on that.
Article 7 is the creation of stabilization fund for the new middle high school. This ties into the revised financial policies. So then we have solar projects. A third is put into this new stabilization fund. A third is put into our unfunded liabilities, OPEB and pension. And a third is put back into capital. So we do need to have a vote to create this article, and then the article also allows that money to be transferred every year.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Select Board go ahead and approve Article 7 as printed in the draft budget.
Further discussion? Being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. FinCom's all set?
Motion?
I make a motion to recommend Article 7 as written in the town warrant. Second.
Motion made and seconded for Article 7 is written in the town warrant. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We still have 10?
We're still waiting on Article 8.
Meg, can you explain what Article 8 is, the septic loan article? It's very simple, it's just that council's got to put some language in it.
Yeah, so, well, and actually researching it a little bit further, we figured out the way that it's supposed to be handled by Department of Revenue Standards. But basically, what happened when we initially had a septic loan program is that we got grant money that went into one fund. When that grant money ran out, then we had a loan program from the NWPAT, and that's in a different fund. It's called Receipts Reserved for Appropriation, and what that means is you can't take money out of there unless it's voted at town meeting. So the grant money has been used for for repairing septic loans, and now the Board of Health agent still has septic loans septic projects that are in need of funding, but because it's all tied up in this Receipts Reserved for Appropriation, we need to move funds from Receipts Reserved for Appropriation to the grant program to make it available for residents if their septic systems fail.
Mr. Chairman, I move we table this until we see the final language from town council.
Second. Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Article 9, an article to amend the Carver, Marion, Wareham Regional Refuse District Agreement as approved by the CMWRRDD.
Yes, Article 9 and 10 are on the same topic. The district, I will state from the beginning, is that the town has 3 members that are on this 9-member district. Mr. Belbin is very passionate about his desire to keep some form of the district up and running, and again, I just want to recognize that he would like to see the district continue to operate. Having said that, is the district voted 5-3 to move forward with revising its rules and regulations, which is what this document is. It goes to all 3 towns. All 3 towns would have to vote on this in order for it to become effective. They would not be able to go out and bond and borrow money, which they're allowed to do right now, which the town would have to pay for if they weren't able to pay for that bond or that expenses. So it reduces down their powers, if you will. Those powers are, they have already voted that they will be closing the district down from the transfer station on December 31st, and that it will not reopen. This document further memorializes that they can't reopen it with a vote of those 9 members. They would have to bring it back to the 3 towns. Again, in the 3 towns, meaning it had to bring it back to the Board of Selectmen. There's a lot of detail in here, but in summation, this protects the district from itself. As many remember, I got involved in the district about 3 years ago, identified a bunch of fraud that was going on, alleged fraud that has some criminal actions that are being taken by the courts. The district has also taken litigation to protect its assets, and this is what you have in front of you at this particular point.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Select Board go ahead and recommend Article 9 as printed in the draft town meeting warrant.
Second. Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Bob?
So, yes, I am passionate about this. I think that our transfer station serves a vital purpose to our residents. This agreement has to be voted on by all 3 towns. If one town votes against it, it's null and void. We have to go back to the drawing boards, the district, we as the district will have to go back to the drawing boards and create something else as a draft document so we can bring it back to the towns again. My feeling is that the people that are in the district right now are so focused right now on saving money and to turn around and protecting the assets that the district has. We voted to put money away for liabilities. So any money that's left at the end of the year will be put into a separate fund. That way that we won't go back to the towns and say, hey, we want more money. There is no, I'm going to be clear with this, there is no way to find out how many people are going to use the transfer station, how much trash people are going to put into the transfer station. There is no calculation that is 100% accurate. There isn't. You can have this number, that number, the other one. We don't know. The cost that we can look at and try to quantify, which has been done by the town administrator and our executive, all right, puts it at a certain number. I submitted paperwork to the finance committee with a different number, which was a lot higher, and it was a lot higher because of recycling costs are going to skyrocket. Right now, it's at $135 a ton. The trash, it used to be to dispose of regular trash, it was somewhere around $70, $80, and it's up to almost $100 now a ton. That number's going to go higher. It's just a fact of life. So the district, with me and the members from Wareham, have been having discussions to go ahead and say, how much is this going to cost us and how much can we do? I think that with tight controls, we can control how much is going to be spent to run the facility. And I've always said this, is that the people that use the system have to pay for it. We shouldn't have to go back to the towns and ask them for money. The issue about bonding, there is no way that I would support any bonding from the district, all right, for the process that goes through with this. None at all. It has to be self-supporting. I had recommended that we do this for 2 years, take a look, see how it works. If it works out and we're going forward, we're paying all of our bills, great. If we're not, then it's time to get out of the district. Okay? Closing this district basically says no more. No more transfer station. You're stuck with trash haulers, and whatever the trash hauler wants to charge, that's what you got to pay. And some people can't afford that, and I recognize that. I use it every other week. I don't go every week, every other week. Mine's truck's in the shop. It's piling up at my house right now. But as soon as my truck's ready, I'll bring it back. But this article here of cutting the district down and not doing a transfer station does damage to our residents that actually use it. So that's my spiel right now, and thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Other discussion?
Yeah, question. Just pertaining to this article, this is just going down to their skeleton level. The fact that they voted to close the recycle station at the end of December, that's a totally different issue, is it not?
It is, and I just for clarification, the district, the 9 members of the district voted, the majority voted to close down the district. So that's already done. So this doesn't keep the district open. This doesn't do anything like that. Then the district, after they took that vote, put this regulation together to limit their power so it can't be changed in the future. And I believe Bob, that he says he wouldn't bond anything, but doesn't mean that the next Bob Jr. that's on there next, wouldn't bond things. And having seen the hundreds of thousands of dollars that was misappropriated into someone's private account through that district with no checks and balances and oversight, I am adamant that, this should be approved, which is why the district approved this to limit their powers.
So
It protects everybody.
With all due respect, so basically, my interpretation of this is just this particular article is protecting the town of Carver from something going completely haywire down the road. Because right now, if we don't pass this or they don't pass it, they can bond whatever they want, and we have absolutely no say in it. Our only say would be our 3 members. But if the other members went through and made a motion to approve further bonding, we'd be on the hook for that. So as far as I'm concerned, I stick by my recommendation to go ahead and recommend this article to town meeting, and that I believe it should be passed. With all due respect, Bob, it's just that, what you're saying is good, but I don't think it pertains to this particular article.
Well, Mr. Chairman, it actually does. What this does is it creates another format of the district, because the district is never going to end. This district will always be there, all right? But it drops it down to a 3-member board, from a 9-member down to a 3-member board, and then also has a 3-member board of an administrative end of it, where the chairman and 3 members, i.e. the town administrators, will oversee the money too, to make sure that there is checks and balances. That's what this does. So it does actually drop it out and say, guess what? We all vote this down, the transfer station's done and over with. All right, if we don't, if this gets voted down, okay, then it allows the district to rethink it and say, well, what else can we do? Maybe we should keep it open.
But what if they don't? I know you've gone ahead and tried to, worked at, you've tried to go ahead and encourage another board member to go ahead and change their vote, because, and as believing as passionately you do, I would expect you to do that. But there's no guarantee they're going to vote anything different. They basically said the recycling center ends. It's stopping. So we need to have some protection as to what goes on to make sure no other bonding comes on. You and I disagree on this. This is just my position.
So, if I may, Mr. Chair, so Bob, you're saying that your take on this is that by allowing the district to restructure the way it's been described, the smaller district committee that would exist could have the power to get rid of the district if the town so voted?
Right. This says you can't have trash hauling.
Okay.
It doesn't allow it. This document. So the district would not run a transfer station at all, period. All right, which would also open up funds, because If we're not, then we have to sell everything out. That means we sell all the equipment, we sell the land, that money will turn around and end up coming back to the towns in some way, shape, or form, coming down the pike. And it won't be millions of dollars, but, and also the lawsuits that go on too, that money too, if we ever get money back from those, who knows? But there will be money there, and I think that the district is better off if we have money in the district. It's already there, it's set in place, and we do have money in the district. That the district continues, we can do upgrades to the facility, all right, and we can survive with that money and the money coming in, all right, to keep the district running. And like I said, if after 2 years we can't, then it's time to get out of there. But give it an option, because right now, Convanta's running 28, and Convanta doesn't care what gets put in there or not. All right, we have no authority at all with Convanta.
Bob, what you're saying, though, is that the district has already voted to shut down the district. And
Right.
you disagree with their vote. The district, in addition to voting to not doing any more trash hauling, said, we, as the district, want to change our regulations so we can never do it again. And again, you don't like that vote either, and that's okay. But the district in charge of the operation, by majority vote, says, we're not going to do this anymore. You disagree. But again, what's in front of the town is the recommendation of the district. And clearly, there's a division as to who agrees what.
This is going to be decided by town meeting.
If I could interrupt for a moment, but you said this is a done deal because the district voted on it, but it's not until all 3 towns vote.
No, that is not correct, Sarah. The district is the only entity, not the towns. The 9 members are the only group, individual, empowered to determine if there's going to be trash pickup.
So then why
and
do
they
we have
have voted no.
Why do we have all 3 town
So
clerks?
I'm going to answer that. So why
voting
you
on
have
this?
this in front of you is that those 9 people have voted to say, we don't want the next group behind us coming in and changing our votes. We want the towns to adopt this. And therefore, because they've run all the cost-benefit analysis, they can't come up with something that's going to work financially to protect the towns. And that's why their professional recommendation is to do this. And the second article is our boots and suspenders in case one town decides not to follow this through. We at least have an option to protect ourselves. But again, Bob, you're committed, you want to support that, and I support your decision if you can make the numbers work. I've always said that. To date, you haven't, nor has anyone ever been able to demonstrate with some certainty and some financial backing they can make the numbers work.
Mr. Chairman, basically, we're not voting to advance this. I think we all agree that this is going to go to town meeting because it's up to the town to decide, correct?
Right.
So all we're voting on is what is our recommendation going to be?
But
And I would suggest, as opposed to getting bogged down into every nitnoid thing, we can do that at town meeting.
Well, I think the other thing that needs to be mentioned here is, let's say after the next elections, there are new appointments that go out to the district, and suddenly the majority of the district reverses the decision that's been made to close the district, and they decide they're going to move forward, and they're going to do trash and so forth, and they're going to bond. All of a sudden, we as the town of Carver have to pay for that. We don't have any choice. We will be bound by whatever they decide to do and obligated to make the payments. And this is going down the North Carver Water District all over again. I was at the town meeting when Jack Hunter, as the planner, told us, North Carver Water, you will never have to pay a dime for it. You know, the $295,000 that's in there for a payment this year, we'll never have to pay a dime for it again. And we've been paying $200,000, $200,000, $200,000. We have no idea what's going to happen here, and we could end up having the rest of the taxpayers in Carver that don't use the facility paying for you to be able to go use the facility at a discounted rate. And, you know, we've discussed this before. If we knew what the numbers were, but I think the district is acting, you know, with caution to recognize that if they changed right now, this town is at risk for a new board deciding, you know what, we're keeping it open. And Carver, you're going to have to start paying us $300,000 a year because that's just going to be our share of the cost. And we just don't know. We've gone down it once. We were told there won't be any cost. And even you admit you have no idea whether it would be neutral, make money or lose money. It depends how many people, you know, use it. Again, a lot of people grab a sticker, especially this year, at $10 a piece. I get a sticker, and, you know, 2 or 3 times a year, I clean out the attic and take stuff down there, but it doesn't mean I take my trash on a regular basis down there. We're coming to the end of a 30-year sweetheart deal where because we hosted a landfill, we got really cheap rates to take care of our trash. And it's great, but now we're out in the real world facing what everyone else has to. And as I think of this, if this was such a great way to go, why haven't other communities gotten together to form their own collective and do what these guys have been doing? Marion's already pulled out. We've got one member of this that's already pulled out, and they've gone to townwide trash pickup.
That's not true.
It's not.
Marion has taken one vote to leave the district. One, you need two votes.
Haven't they gone to townwide trash pickup?
You need 2 votes.
But
I'm not talking about that.
Right, yes, they went to townwide trash. They went to a 2.5 override, if I remember correctly, to do that, and they still need more money after that.
Again, Mr. Chairman?
So, I mean,
And I understand your point, Bob, but again, that's going beyond the scope of what we're
Well, I
here
think
to
the
do.
town needs to understand.
And the
what's at
town will
stake.
be able to do that at town meeting.
I think by vetting it here, it gives us an opportunity to understand what's at stake. Anyway, other discussion.
Finance Committee?
I
Well, they're
think
gonna
that
take their own.
FinCom is not it has no marking on this, but I think that this is absolutely within FinCom. We've had discussions about this already. We're having one again on the 23rd. I would like very much for the select board to consider allowing FinCom to weigh in on this.
Well, I mean, you can take your vote on this, but
allow for a vote on this.
Oh, you will add it to it. That's easy.
It's not added to.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah, okay, add it to the warrant that the
Well,
FinCom will take a
yes,
vote.
so-
All right, but finishing up the select board discussion, any more discussion from the select board? Being none, those in favor of recommending this article to town meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I recommend it too.
You recommend?
To bring it before, not
Well, no,
not
no, I'm
voting in
sorry, recommend
favor of it. I'm bringing it.
approval of the article.
You're making
All right.
approval.
Recommend approval of the article.
Yes.
You recommend approval of the article?
I'm not for it, but I want the public to go ahead and be.
No, this isn't whether it goes on the town meeting warrant. This is whether the board's recommendation to
All
town
right,
meeting.
then I vote against it.
I do too.
You're voting against it? Wow.
Yeah.
All right, vote goes as 3-2. And FinCom?
So, I just have a quick question, maybe for Mr. Belvin. So today, if I go to the transfer station, it's a Seamaster or Covanta employee there, right?
Yes.
Now, who would that be on 1/1/2021?
Right now, no one.
Right,
But if the district decided after town meeting that this doesn't get through and we have to do a different type of agreement, all right, and we have to come back, then if the district decides, hey, we do want to keep the transfer station running, the district would have to hire, and in my recommendation, it would be 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees just to start out to get in there.
Okay.
What would be the cost of that?
My.
Full-time employees plus the part-time employees.
So my thought process is this, is that you need one person to be some type of a management person there. You would need another person to be a driver, so we're not paying $100 and whatever dollars as someone to transport it back and forth, that we have it in-house. Same with a part-timer one. If the full-timer's out, we can keep the part-timer that's a driver too. And then another one just to turn around and make sure that everything's running smoothly, checking stickers to make sure what's being put in there is the right trash, because that's part of the big thing is what's getting put into recyclables is recyclable. What put into the trash is trash, and there are other opportunities. I did present you guys other options that can be done.
Anybody else? I think we discussed this, and I think the big problem that FinCom has, and anybody correct me if I misstate, please, is that we don't know what we don't know. We don't know. We don't know $250 sticker, $400 sticker. We discussed this at the last meeting, that if it starts out at $250 and I have commercial pickup and Kate has commercial pickup, so we don't buy stickers, and now Beth wants to go to the dump, but because we didn't sell enough stickers, hers is now $275, and we're off to the races. We don't know. I do agree that Carver's had a sweetheart deal. I don't use the dump. I do have a dump sticker. I've never been to the transfer facility. I think, and I think I stated this at town meeting, and I think I stated this before this committee. Deal with your own trash. The gravy train days are over, and you don't have a lot of choices. You're gonna have to either get a private hauler or seek a different avenue. I see this as turning into the North Carver Water District all over again, and we're gonna find ourselves, like Middleborough does, subsidizing their enterprise account after they've charged every resident $240 per house for their trash pickup, and they still can't make ends meet off the enterprise account. So I think it's a great idea what you're trying to do. I'm just not convinced that it's gonna work without it having, I'm in the trucking business, without it having ridiculous future increases in costs that we just have no way of controlling. We can get a locked-in rate for the tonnage for a 5-year rate at $80 a ton, and we can't control the cost of diesel fuel and the cost of the insurance. We can't control the raises we have to give or the additional cost of if we use private contractors, the additional cost that they're gonna charge us to haul, because no one's gonna lock a rate in without allowing for a fuel surcharge. What if fuel goes crazy nuts? You have to allow for a fuel surcharge or they just aren't gonna perform. I think there's too many we don't knows. I think that it's been run great in the past. I'm very grateful that Michael caught the huge discrepancy. I'm in favor of this being written the way it's written because I don't want anybody being able to have control over our ability or a gun to our head to bond money that we have no say in. I don't know what the answer is for the trash. I know it's no matter which way this goes, this is not going to be an easy decision even for town meeting. It's not. It's not. Unless someone wants to drop, $1.5 million in our lap somewhere out of heaven and say, here, do what you can with this to make trash work. We have no idea how this is going to work out. And I think it's the unknown that's going to be the bigger problem, only because we can go back in history now, and like you just talked about a little while ago, Mr. Chairman, we talk about the North Carver Water District and how it was going to be and was going to be and was not going to be, and it ended up, this is what it is. And I believe it was $250,000 a year for a while then. So I don't know. I think that our committee, and I'm not speaking for the committee, but I think in discussions we've had, I think that our committee is in favor of allowing competition with multiple trash haulers. Because that's the only way you're going to be able to keep the costs somewhat under control. Because none of us want to put Plymouth Rock out of business, or Nauset, or what was then Dana Wakeis, and so on and so on. I think the only way to keep those guys in business is not to lock in one single solitary hauler. If we do go to trash collection, and then, we just don't have enough data on picking it up and doing it ourselves. I think it's admirable you want to. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I just think that we just don't know what we don't know.
And what I will say is the 9 members that are on the committee is, again, we spent 3+ years trying to turn that organization around. When we came in there, theft was occurring, balances were in the negative, and we've been able to build up a reserve of $800,000 in 3 years. That says something. Now with that, when you look at those 9 members, the 3 members that voted to change this, that voted in the minority not to support this, they're the 3 newest members. And with all due respect, they weren't around for the 3+ years with all of the knowledge that the rest of the members had to analyze all these things. And they tried for years figuring out what solutions would be and weren't able to come up with something. What I will say is that, and so, I mean, I think that this is going to be a relatively easy decision for town meeting, because this protects the town's liability, because without this, and without following the majority of the members, the town has future liability. Now, trash is important. We have to have options with trash. And as I said to the selectmen, as I said to the finance committee, you know, I've been exploring options. And I think one of my last acts that I'll be doing is what I was able to get finalized this morning, is that we have and this was discussed at the Town of Plymouth. The Town of Plymouth's Finance Committee met last week, and they're all supportive of letting Carver residents go to the Town of Plymouth. For any of you that have been to the Town of Plymouth recycling facility, it is a professionally run facility. They do all recycling there. They have different bins for everything. And they have the economies of scale. They have the masses to be able to run a facility. Our small town, you know, has to try to connect with Wareham, and then we need 2 or 3 other towns in order to get enough base to make it profitable, because you still got to pay the 2 full-time employees, the 2 part-time employees, the benefits, the fuel, the interest, the equipment, the upgrades, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's a huge liability. And what Plymouth is going to allow us to do is that any Carver resident can go buy a sticker from the Town of Plymouth and use their facility. Now with that, here's the downside. The downside is that the distance from Carver Town Hall to the Rochester facility versus Carver Town Hall to the Plymouth facility is about 8 minutes longer, maybe 10 minutes with traffic. So you got an extra 8 to 10 minutes. But that's the downside. Here's the upside. There's no future liability to the town. Plymouth is just operating the facility as it is. They're letting Carver residents buy stickers. They are going to charge Carver residents a little premium on the sticker. And you have to buy bags at the same rate that Plymouth's buying bags. So the rate's going to be $250 for an annual sticker plus bags. Carver, Plymouth, and again, that's adding about $50 to their rates. But there's no liability. Let me repeat that again. There's no liability to the town of Carver. And I'm going to do it one more time just for fun. There's no liability, because this is the important thing. Again, I commend Bob for his effort to do it, but he hasn't been able to put together a plan that shows no liability. This has no liability for them to be able to do it. It gets better recycling that's done down there. Yes, you got to drive a little bit longer, kind of plan your trip around BJ's and do that once every week, and you're going to be fine. But there's no liability. In addition to that, I've also been talking to Waste Management. They're going to be sending me and I actually reached out to all the haulers. Waste Management was the only one that's come back, and they're going to provide a 2-month, 2 free months with their new subscription, and they're getting me all the numbers on that. So anybody for Carver for 2021 will be able to sign up and get 2 months free. And again, that's if you want to do private. So
At what rate for that?
I'm still waiting for the final rate on that.
There's never free. Free
Yes.
is.
I'm
Right.
assuming it's not free.
But again, we have to provide options. We now have an option with Plymouth. Marion wants to let us use their facility, and they would just charge us a sticker fee. Again, no liability. My professional recommendation, as I've been trying to do before, is don't accept liability if you don't need it. But we have a community need we have to solve, and this is a way of doing it. And, you know, as Bob's run his numbers, I mean, I'm sure when he thinks about this, and then I will put you on the spot, Bob, but $250 for an annual sticker with no liability, your plan still called for buying bags, so the bags should still be bought, is a good deal for the town of Carver.
But, Michael, you're still talking, with the bags, you're still talking close to $400 a year plus with the bags.
Bob, you'd have to buy bags with your plan too.
But the number that we were looking at was nowhere near 250. It was closer to 125 to 150, somewhere around there.
Right, but no professionals would back that number. That was just you and 2 other members coming up with that number. It
Well,
wasn't
one of
supported
them
by the
has
director.
worked for the industry for many, many years, so.
Again, it wasn't
retired
supported
from
by
it.
the director.
All right, we've heard from everyone.
And even if Bob's number is correct at 125, just give me a second. Fine, take it 125. Say you can get it for 125, 150. What happens when there's a liability, it goes up to $300 and the town has to pay that? What happens? You don't have a solution for that. That's the point that I keep on saying. There's no liability by piggybacking on somebody else doing it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, no, if I can, I just want to ask a clarifying question, because in your original comments, Bob, you mentioned conversations with folks from Wareham about a new agreement and a new district and those sorts of things. Can you elaborate a little bit on the nature of those discussions and what conversations you're having with those folks and what those are?
Wareham has over 5,000 stickers that they send out every year, and that increases during the summertime too, all right, with their people. Marion, they want to leave no matter what. You have to understand. Rochester, they're looking for another option too, because I think there's other political issues going on here, is that Rochester is looking to buy the Route 28 facility. Wareham wants to buy the Route 28 facility. They buy it, they're going to run a system no matter what, whether Carver joins or not. Rochester, they're going to need something because some of their residents, they don't have to pay anything to use the Rochester site because they have an agreement with Covanta that runs it there. So if we end, that means they don't have something. They need something too. So there's a possibility with them. So you have this option of keeping the district going the way it does, because there's money would be available to do upgrades there and to purchase what we need to purchase to keep it up and running. All right, and still charge a fee and also go to a bag system. Some people like a bag system, some people don't. I get it from different points of view. The other option is a municipal agreement that we had talks with Wareham, town administrator and one of their selectmen who's also on the district, about having a municipal agreement, and they've spent $5,000 to research to see how much it's going to cost, where is it going to go with that. But I haven't heard anything back from them. We haven't had a second one.
Who was part of those discussions?
Me, the town administrator, Jim Munus.
Of Wareham?
Of Wareham. So there's another member, I can't remember his name right now. I can't think of it, but he's also on the district.
So
Benedict? Joe Benedict?
Here's
Joe Benedict?
Joe Benedict, yeah, thank you.
here's why part of the reason why I asked the question. This article is intended to codify protect ourselves financially going forward with the district as currently constituted, right? So if we do not approve this article, then the current district representatives have control over bonding and all that sort of stuff. We've highlighted that many times. Town meeting has to vote on this article to protect ourselves so that we can be fiscally responsible going forward with the district and how it functions. If we have 3 members that represent the town of Carver, 2 of the 3 members don't agree with agreed with closing the district. But if we have a member of our constituency that's representing our town having conversations with one of the member towns about an alternative plan, if this article doesn't pass, theoretically, that one member from Carver and other members of other communities could could dictate our future. And yet the 3 members that we've asked to represent us, the majority of them don't agree with that course of action. My concern would be that if we have individuals within the town representing an initiative that's not consistent with what's in our best interests. Carver has to look out for Carver's best interests, not the district's. It has to look out for what's in the best interests of us as a town. And if we have members of this committee having conversations with other member towns of the district, and this isn't passed, they could make decisions down the road that hurt us financially. I think, that's my interpretation of how this all works, is if we do not pass this article and take control, then the 9 members of the district take control and can bond money going forward. And yet, we have 2 members of our constituency here locally that don't agree with that course of action. That's dangerous to me.
So if this isn't voted in favor, it goes back to the old agreement where we were. Marion's already took 1 vote to get out, okay?
Bob, let me talk about Article 10 because I think it's important there. Article 10, the next article, would allow Carver to take the same vote as Marion. Then at that point, Carver and Marion would then be able to control the district with our 6 votes and shut the district down. You need more than 1 town to do it, so we would be able to shut the district down and benefit Carver and Marion if Wareham wants to fight this. And again, this is 1 selectman stating they're going to come back and fight it at town meeting. The Board of Selectmen in Wareham have not voted to support what's going on at this particular point. They are studying it, but they haven't voted to support it. So the Article 10 is our boots and suspenders, so don't be feared or fearful if Wareham votes it down. Article 10 is our boots and suspenders to protect ourselves.
And I get that. My concern is that if we
wasn't ready.
vote down Article 9 because we want to keep the district open, I mean, there's an unrealistic expectation that Article 10 would be approved. Am I right? I mean, the sort of the precipice, or the concept behind not passing Article 9 would be consistent with not approving leaving the district for Article 10.
Correct.
So if they both fail, we're in the ship I'm talking about, and we're sailing straight ahead with no rudder.
Yep.
And absolutely no control over the wheel.
Yep.
So what essentially my point still holds true. I understand that that's the follow-up, but if Article 9 doesn't pass, it would essentially mean that Article 10 shouldn't pass either under the same rationale. We lose control of our own destiny. We put ourselves in a position where we are now fiscally irresponsible because losing control of our own fiscal situation is not a good situation. So I'm sort of repeating myself, but I just think that it makes sense for us as a town to do what protects us the most, and that is to recommend an approval for Article 9 so that we can codify our position and make sure we're protected going forward. And we don't have, not to say that Bob would do this with Wareham, but Bob's replacement might do this with Wareham. And now we've got 5 people in favor of a district that forces us to do something financially that we don't agree with, and we had 2 other members that didn't agree with that course of action. We could have a majority of our representation feel one way and be forced to do something entirely different. That's dangerous to me.
And you could actually say the same thing to the other side, too, that says, well, if the other 2 people voted to get rid of it, and it gets rid of, then lo and behold, the people that utilize the system, 1,800 people from Carver.
It's not 1,800.
Mr. Chairman.
Those are the stickers, those are the sticker numbers that came out.
Point of order. I believe this is the Finance Committee's vote that's considering. So actually, unless Mr. Belbin's asked a direct question, isn't this discussion supposed to be amongst you folks so you can take your vote on it? Since we've already taken
the Finance Committee.
Well, I've been trying to get a word in edgewise here. Since we happen to have a second member of this little district sitting on our committee, where are you at with this, Mr. Duggan?
Well, I voted against, keeping the district open. And to me, it's always been the private sector should be taking care of this, and not have the liability with the town. And I think, if you had three people who wanted to open up, if you can get enough people to, backers, and not get the taxpayers, hurt by it. In other words, financial backing from, other people. And the other question I had, Mike, you mentioned Marion would have the same type of agreement for us as Plymouth would have? I mean, and how much would that be?
In conversations with the town of Marion, their intent, now again, the district has voted to close down the transfer stations. The district will not run transfer stations. Come January 1st, 2021, there will be no transfer station for the 3 towns to do. However, the town of Marion, because their smaller district is in their town, they are thinking of keeping that open 2 or 3 days a week. If they're already going to go through the process of funding the labor to be there and in taking the liability responsibility for it, that's what they're agreeing to do, they're already open. So from their standpoint, they would be willing to sell tickets or stickers to Carver, because that's just added revenue to them because they already got their fixed cost. Again, I keep on using the word liability. There's 2 options with no liability. If Wareham goes and creates its own district, it's also going to offer Carver the ability of buying stickers because they've already got their overhead there. And if we're going to be buying a sticker, that's extra money for them. That's profit, so to speak, to them. So to your point, Bill, in any one of those scenarios, Carver wins because now the resident can pick who they want to buy the sticker from. That's what I'm trying to set up without liability to the town. And there's no other plan that's been put forward that shows that this can be done without liability to the town.
Any idea what Marion would be charging?
I suspect it might be less.
Yeah.
because I don't think they're gonna do bags. But they haven't decided that.
So we have the option for people, I mean, I take my trash all the time to the transfer station. I don't want the blue barrels out in front of my house and all that.
Yep.
So having Plymouth and Marion and
They have options.
one or the other, yeah.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, do you think you guys are ready to take a vote?
George has a question.
With working with Plymouth, is there going to be a minimum amount of people that have to buy stickers in order to make this work?
No, they're going through the process right now. They're doing a write-up as to where somebody would buy the sticker. You go over, you show you the license, and you buy a sticker either at Town Hall or at their transfer facility. It'd be the $250 annually, and you buy bags, which you can buy them at any store in Plymouth, and you go about doing it. If one person does it, or 50 or 500 do it, that's who could do it. So again, no liability, no cap.
Thank you. I'm going to call the question on this before we beat this thing till tomorrow morning. So we need a motion.
I make a motion to recommend Article 9 as written to town meeting.
I need a second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to recommend Article 9 to town meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And you guys voted?
Yes.
3-2.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, I move that the Select Board go ahead and recommend Article 10 as printed in the draft town warrant.
Further
Now, again,
discussion?
Article 10 is important because it's the boots and suspenders for the town of Carver. After the vote was taken by the district to recommend Article 9 to the three towns, a member from Wareham said, well, let's change the membership and revote this. Again, this is going back to reneging on the Democratic vote that was done and trying to reshuffle the decks so you can change the votes. What Article 10 does is it allows us to be at par with Marion. Doesn't mean the town of Carver's leaving the district. It just means this first vote allows us to negotiate with the district. Marion has the ability of negotiating with the district. In essence, 6 of the 9 votes will be negotiating with themselves as to what's in the best interest of the 6. And that's the leverage that would happen if Wareham decides not to vote for Article 9, is that now we have leverage to control our destiny. If they vote for Article 9, no harm, no foul. But if they don't vote for Article 9, Article 10 allows some leverage where the two towns can come together and force the third one to play by the rules the district voted.
If a member of the board was in favor of Article 9, then it follows we should be in favor of Article 10.
Correct.
Further discussion by the Select Board? Being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Was that unanimous?
I voted aye for this
Yeah.
one.
Okay.
I'd like FinCom to weigh in on this also. What's your pleasure, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, please do.
It'll be quick.
Absolutely.
Well, again, it's not in the, it doesn't say that. It says just the selectmen.
I
Now it
understand, but
does.
Thank you.
I would always defer to you, Mr. Chairman.
No, not really. My vice chair would like to see in this amended, if we could include the wording somewhere in there, it says, shall be contingent upon terms deemed acceptable by the select board and approval at subsequent town meeting. We'd also like to see the word FinCom added in there somewhere.
So just so you know, is that after they negotiate something by this, it has to come back to town meeting for a second vote. So you get the second whack at it if we had to close down the district. So no matter what, it comes back.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But it says it deemed acceptable by the select board. I'd like to see FinCom added into that wording.
Oh, okay.
I understand it's going to go to town meeting, I get that.
I understand. Yep, that makes perfect sense.
So if that could happen, and then I would take a motion with that amendment, with that wording change.
I make a motion to recommend Article 10 with the adding of acceptable by the Select Board and Finance Committee
And et cetera, et cetera.
and approval at the subsequent town
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve Article 10 with the additional wording. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. Chairman, I move the Select Board go ahead and approve Article 10 with the amended wording from the Finance Committee.
Okay. Further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No,
Huh?
I don't want the wording of,
You don't want the FinCom added?
no,
So you're voting no?
yeah.
Sarah?
Yeah, I would vote no.
Okay, so 3-2.
So, okay.
So that was,
All right, I believe we did 11,
Yep,
Yep.
number 12.
and so we're on 12.
And I think these next few articles were from Mr. Feldman, so.
can I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'm just curious, why don't you want FinCom to weigh in on that?
Because
Just curious.
the first part is negotiating it out, okay, that the Board of Selectmen would do, that's a more administrative function
I
for
get
us.
that.
And then, once it goes back to town meeting, when we have to bring it back for money issues, then we bring it to finance. And that's where you guys have your bite of the apple for it, so.
Well, why wouldn't you want finance to weigh in on it? We don't have to be in the negotiations, but it certainly would, from an informative standpoint, why wouldn't you want FinCom?
Well, everything was done in the open anyways.
Just curious. Okay, doesn't matter.
Okay, so, I kind of have an issue with these because I want people to understand that when I brought these to the Board of Selectmen, they were ultimately a draft that I figured, put them in there, then we'll sit down, we'll talk about them, and then we'll move forward from there, get everyone's opinion. This is just my opinion, which I don't think is right. I think that all the board members should have had an opportunity to talk about these, discuss them, all right, and then move forward, make changes, adjustments, or whatever. I just,
No, we didn't.
I think the process of how this actually got onto the warrant this year,
Well, Bob, that's on me then, because when you handed out the fence viewing in this, I thought you were telling me you want these on the warrant. So that's why I told Michael to put them on the warrant. So that's my misunderstanding of your intent.
and then, well, that's the issue here I have, that, yes, I feel that things need to be changed, but I think that they need to be changed amongst all of us, not just me.
Well, I mean, actually, I was going to say something similar in the sense that I'd like to see the next board perhaps take this up and review it, because I don't feel comfortable with the changes, just for what you said. We haven't really had a chance to look into them and discuss them.
And I agree with that. So, I mean, if there was any way that we could have a discussion or a subcommittee of this prior to and make some changes then, before we bring it.
In the next month?
Well,
Mr. Chairman,
I personally would rather see you withdraw them and have it taken up after some real, a committee could meet, you could appoint a subcommittee, come in, because, I agree with a couple of the things in here, I disagree with some of the others.
Plus, you'll have a new board.
right. I mean, I'll withdraw them because to be totally honest, I had no clue they were gonna be put
All right,
on
and
the
again,
warrant like this.
Bob, I guess that's on me, because I misunderstood.
So what are we
Put in,
withdrawing, Mr. Chairman?
12 and 13?
12 and 13.
That's all?
You need to vote on that?
Well, hold on.
Wait.
And
I guess 14 and 15 as well?
Well, maybe we should take a motion
14.
one by one on.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, so Bob, you want to make a motion to withdraw 12?
I'll make a motion, we withdraw 12.
I'll second.
Further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Article 13, Bob?
Make a motion, we withdraw it, sorry.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Article 14?
Make a motion, we withdraw.
Second.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
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 Article 15?
Make a motion, we withdraw.
Second.
no, that actually didn't come from Bob.
Okay.
Where'd that come from?
Who'd
This
come from?
is a lot longer than the one I proposed. I was
Well,
just,
I would put this, I would lump it in the same one. I think
The only issue with this one is this is, town council rewrote this. This is when you go to appoint my successor, the bylaws require you to appoint a screening committee. There's no definition on screening committee, so that screening committee could be anybody. Whereas what I think Alan has proposed is that it's made up of a member, or you can have it as the chairman or the designee of each one of these boards that are in town, many of them that are elected, so that you have a structure with people that understand what the town administrator should be doing versus just friends of selectmen, so to speak.
Well, I think that's maligning possibly prior boards and who they chose to be members of. I understand. Again, my opinion, I won't be on the board, I won't be around for this, but my thought process is that this should be, I mean, because approving this, and then this has to go off to the legislature to get approved?
No, this is a bylaw. This is just straight bylaw for the town. Because this is in the Board of Selectmen's authority.
I will defer to the 3 remaining members of the board as to how they'd like to handle this.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chair, I think if we are going to keep it in the warrant, this proposed committee doesn't even include a member of the select board. So that's troubling to me.
Because Sarah, normally what happens is the committee makes a recommendation because the select board
I
keeps
understand
neutral,
how it
and then it
works.
comes to the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, I don't
based
think
upon
only
a
select
screening
board
piece.
members are part of the screening committee.
Yeah, no, they shouldn't be.
Well, I'm just saying, in my recollection, when the 2 that I participated in, we haven't had select board members on. But at any rate, again, I defer to the...
We could table this to your next meeting and let you guys think about this.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I think, I'd make a motion to table.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, the ayes have it.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
No.
Well, I'm going to ask
Go
it
ahead.
anyway. Did we deal with Article 11?
Yes,
That was the chief.
with the police
Was
chief.
I sleeping?
Yes.
Yep.
What was the vote?
We had to wake you.
Sorry.
Kate had to nudge you
I
during
know
the
he was
meeting.
here and he didn't bring us ice cream, but I didn't think we voted on Article 11.
It was
Yeah, we did.
unanimous.
Yeah, it was unanimous.
All right, and FinCom voted 10-0. You got that, Elaine? It's having an
Your vice
out,
chair
He
took
did.
care of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
must have been having an out-of-body experience. I'm sorry.
Where did Article 16 come from?
Let the chief out.
Okay. Well, I know the chief was here, but I just didn't.
Who wrote Article 16?
Anyone know who the author of Article 16
It
is?
was sent to town council.
By whom?
By whom?
I didn't do it.
Did you write it, Michael?
I certainly would not write an article to send to town council like this.
A select board member may not hold any other
so
elective
this is-
office.
It's repealing the law,
14.
bylaw we passed.
All right, I would throw this in with,
16.
Which one are you talking about?
16.
Article 16.
16.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we remove Article
And
16.
let
from-
Bob read
That,
it.
you know what, that was mine, I think.
Yep.
That was one of mine, I'm sorry.
was that part of the other stuff?
That was part of the other stuff, too.
Okay. So is that a
this
motion to withdraw?
I'll make a motion to withdraw that one.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, the ayes.
I
Aye,
apologize.
we've already done
This is my
17.
Billy Bulger I'm doing now.
Getting very excited.
We did Article 17.
18, FinCom.
17 is
FinCom
down,
bylaw
18.
Were you awake for 17?
Yeah,
Okay.
doesn't matter if I was or I wasn't. There's no FinCom vote on 17,
Yeah, we're on 18.
so we're on 18.
And we took action tonight.
Let me give you the, just the, if I may,
Please.
Mr. Chairman. The Governance Committee gave FinCom a stipend that was voted and passed at town meeting. I sent the information to Elaine, I want to say in 2015, 14-ish, 16, whatever. In any case, it was voted, it was passed at town meeting. The language in the bylaw was never cleaned up. When they recommended when the governance committee recommended FinCom get a small stipend, which we still get, no one ever looked at the bylaw to say, oh, it's in the bylaws, you can't, they shall serve without pay, we have to eliminate that, clean that up. So all this is a cleanup of the language to reflect a policy from town meeting vote that was changed 3-4 years ago. It's in the minutes, I did look it up, it's in the minutes of a governance committee meeting. In fact, John Carter abstained from that vote, obviously. And then it went to town meeting where it was approved.
Since you have the floor, why did you call for a vote from your board?
We already did, we voted unanimously 10-0. There was some reservation from Mr. Callahan and Mr. Duggan, that should we kind of like be self-serving, and I said, well, town meeting could still vote this down and, ram us right out of town, so.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the select board recommend Article 18 is printed in the draft town meeting warrant.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, Article 19.
Article 19, Alan, you might want to, can you comment on this one? Oh, no, you're not on that.
I'm not on.
I am on the, Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
I am on the Commission on Disability. However, some of these changes were made at a meeting that I was not present for. But I think the idea behind these changes was there were some inconsistencies in the bylaws for the Commission on Disability. And this language to clean up some of those inconsistencies.
So it's really not changing,
Yeah, it's really not changing
Anything,
anything.
it's a
It's just,
cleanup.
you know, for instance, under the quorum requirements, it's a 7-member committee, but a quorum was listed as 3, so it was changed to be 4. Simple things like that. The more, Section A is the one spot where there are some changes made, and that really addresses having people with disabilities as members of the Commission on Disability.
yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm sure if the board wanted, we could invite the chairman of the board to be here at the next meeting if we wanted her to speak.
I mean, I'm seeing what the changes are, I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
So it's a question what the rest of the board would like to do.
It's pretty straightforward.
It's the pleasure of the board.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Article 20, fence viewer and fence bylaw, my favorite.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this article was reviewed, I believe it was provided by Mr. Bellman, and they're of the opinion that it's not in proper form. They had some questions on it, but most importantly, they see this as more of a zoning bylaw, and with that, it would have to go through the public notice and hearing process through Chapter 40A, which the other zoning bylaws are going through right now and have to be redrafted for that.
Well, in terms of the structure, I would, since it came from the select board, the town council should be responsible for putting it in proper order. However, if it needs to go through hearing, that's a separate issue.
Right, and I guess the question is, with that, is that we could squeak it in, we think, from a hearing standpoint, but they would need better information from what Mr. Bellman's looking to accomplish in here, and council could revise it accordingly, if that's the direction you want to go, Mr. Bellman.
I did make some changes. I did send a message to Mr. Corbo about changes of what he wanted to see, which I did make some of those changes. But I agree that this was another one of the ones that I thought we should talk about first.
So this is my fault again?
No, I'm just, listen. I'm just
Go ahead,
putting-
Bob,
just
you can
putting
say
out
it.
there.
It's Ron's fault. He should have followed up on this.
No.
Finally, he takes the hit.
But I agree, this should be a bylaw for zoning, not for.
You want to withdraw for now and have?
I'll withdraw it now.
Next year? Okay.
For next year to go before.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And I am sorry, Bob, that's my misunderstanding on what you wanted. I thought you were handing them in like, let's go.
See,
So just,
Article 21 is Town-Owned Property Committee, there's another one that Bob submitted.
That one I'd like to stay in.
Okay.
yeah, I don't have an issue with.
So here's the issue with this, is that, no,
You do?
no, it's a major issue, because number one is that there's a process that the treasurer collector has to go through for any and all property that's being done. There's already a TOPS committee that's been in existence for well over 10 years that has professional department heads that review each one of these properties. And when they come up with a recommendation, it is recommended to go through the different boards. This doesn't have the treasurer collector on here. This, we're having trouble getting people to get on committees right now, and now we're forming a new committee to replace one that's already in existence and working. I mean, if the board wants more information and more reports, then you should request that to the existing committee versus just creating something just because.
But, Mr. Chairman, I do not see where this would even fit in the bylaw, because usually if we're amending bylaws or putting in the section and whatnot, and there's not even a proposed
Well, I think it's
section.
new. I think it would be.
Yeah, but it would still have to be a proposed section of where you're putting it into the bylaws.
I mean, I'm sure we could find where it needs to go.
Well, it'd have to be in the,
Right, well, I mean, we have time before town meeting to figure out where it would exactly go.
But again, what's the purpose? What's it meant to do?
It takes the place of the TOPS committee and has greater representation in terms of making the
But
recommendation.
again, what's,
right?
what's
That's
the
my
purpose
opinion.
to do? I mean, it's more than that. There's rules, regulations to follow that, I'm gonna tell you, nothing's gonna get done if this is put together. I mean, it hasn't been thought out. It's a knee-jerk reaction to something that could be resolved with some discussion. And again, you want to put it in there, obviously it's your choice. I'm just suggesting, what good governance is this going to provide when
Well,
you haven't
it's
even
just
tried
replacing the
obvious-
existing committee. It's not changing any of the other processes, is it?
I'm just sharing information with you. You can do what you want. I'm just sharing it's what's,
The only thing that does concern me is perhaps not having the involvement of the treasurer collector.
Well, actually, under C, it says advising the treasurer collector, so they are part of,
yeah, but it's the other way around. The treasurer collector is advising what needs to be done to the property, and that's, again, the piece that it's missing is you're
Well, they
not
can't even do
following
their
the
job without the treasurer collector
Right.
providing the information.
So why don't we just add the treasurer collector under 1G and the treasurer collector, so that, because they are part of the committee now.
Can I suggest maybe you take this up at your next meeting and ask the treasurer collector and the finance director and the TOPS committee to come in and talk about it, so you know what you're doing before you do something?
Well, that's a little condescending, but,
Well, I'm just saying,
Not-
it
not
doesn't
appreciated.
have a purpose.
Well, I'd also like to see why you want to exclude finance. This was brought up tonight at our meeting, and frankly, a couple of our members are sitting back saying, what's the story here?
you can add yours too.
That's telling us we're going
We don't need to have more oversight that will burden.
well, I don't think that's the intent. I think it's been, what are they, 3 or 4 people on the committee currently?
No. Made up of 6, 7 people.
Yeah, it's about this, except for the 2 residents of Carver appointed by the select board, it's about this same makeup.
And all these people talk to the chairmans anyway. It's just redundancy that just creates more bureaucracy that I just want you to understand what you're doing before you do something.
Well, again, I think the intent was just to diversify the members, everyone that's involved and have different input from other committees. I guess I'd have no problem if we want to, can we defer this until the next meeting? Will we have time to make changes in the
Yes.
wording?
It's not a money article.
If we wait till the 17th?
Yes.
Because I know we want to have this out so people can see the warrant ahead of time. Is that all right with you, Bob?
Yeah.
All right, so is motion to table 21?
Motion table.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Article 22, now probably
I'm going to
here-
suggest 22 through all the zoning articles. They all get tabled. And on the 17th, you have a meeting with the,
What page does that take us through?
and that takes you through page 34. And then at your meeting, your next meeting, you have the planning board make a recommendation on all these as well.
Yeah, we're not in a position to do much with that.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Article 28 is tax title property that was taken as it relates to the Cedar Swamp facility that I've mentioned is something we've been working on to create a park through
This is
Cedar
the one that's
Swamp.
going to take some time to do, just parcel by parcel to make it
Right.
large enough.
So what you have on here is a map. The map identifies the 17 parcels that are in purple. Those are the parcels that are part of this. The ones in blue are the ones the town already owns. The one in white are either owners unknown or we're still trying to identify who all those people are. Again, the intent is that over time, is that all these parcels become conservation land for passive recreation by the town. These were land of value. They were put up for auction. No one bid on them, so they go back to town meeting to make a determination as to what to do. Article 28 is to recommend those be put under conservation purposes.
Mr. Chairman, I move we recommend Article 28 as written in the draft warrant of the town meeting warrant.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? FinCom vote on this?
Yep. Need a motion?
I make a motion to recommend Article 28 as written in the town warrant draft.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to recommend Article
Just
28.
one quick comment, minor, but you might want to write Article 28. where it's
Yes, they were going
first
to make that
glance
change.
is-
Yep, yeah, they've already identified that.
Okay.
Yep.
Gonna be going that soon as they, oops.
Yeah, because I was wondering how it applied to the Chiefs.
Hey, he's got some cedar land.
Did you guys vote?
Not yet. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 9-0.
And Mr. Chairman, the last article, Article 30, is the petition.
No, Article 29.
We already
You've already
did
voted
that.
that.
That was the Wenham Shores.
Oh,
Yeah, that was
good.
Wenham Shores, that's
Glad
right.
to hear that.
Article 30 is a petition article. Town council has reviewed this. It's not something the town can enforce or enact because it's not consistent with law, the way it's written. They'd be more than happy to explain this, but their recommendation is that, the citizen petition cannot supersede state law.
Mr. Chairman, since this is a citizen petition, I don't think we can remove it from the warrant, but I recommend that the select board take no action or no recommendation.
Is there a second?
Second.
And if you read on the back in italics, the note there from council is that there is with it.
Motion made and seconded to take no action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. That, ladies and gentlemen, bring us to the end of the warrant review.
Oh, Lord, help us, we're not done yet.
If the FinCom would like to retire for the evening, we'll allow you to entertain that vote, or if you'd like to stay and observe, you're more than welcome to do that.
Is this great time or what, guys?
Yeah.
We're gonna bail out
I'm
now?
ready to retire.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
I tried. Motion made and seconded for FinCom to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I tried,
Thank you.
but thanks for the invite.
Town Administrator update, discussion on Weather Vane Patriot Pines Group Development, Wade Street property owned by the town. This was, we had a presentation at our last meeting about this, and I know that several members wanted to, this is not to drag anything out, but they just wanted to make a few comments about what we heard. So that, now it does say Town Administrator update. Did you, sir, have anything to add to this?
I do, but before that, I want to pass out coronavirus pamphlets.
Well, in that case, to the rest of the board, did anybody, Sarah, do you want to comment?
Yes, I do. Thank you. The main point that I wanted to...
Silence, please, if we could.
The main point that I wanted to make was that when this organization came to present to us at our last meeting, they and I think it was pretty clear at first that they were suggesting that they were going to transfer their this was a proposed affordable housing project in a mixed-use development. But when they first stated what they were planning to do, they talked about transferring their percentage of affordable units from the development on South Meadow Road to the development on Silver Street.
Correct.
And as soon as I heard that, I immediately thought, okay, we're segregating the affordable units, because that's what it sounded like. And so I spoke on that, not very well, at our last meeting. And the main thing I wanted to point out is not only am I a huge advocate of affordable housing, but in planning board, when I served on planning board, we worked really hard to pass the current bylaw about percentages of affordable housing that have to be integrated into all developments that get special permits. But the main thing about them, too, was that they had to all look alike. And so when I mentioned that at our select board meeting the other night to the people who were proposing this, the Weather Vane Patriot Pines Group development, it turns out that's what they're doing. But, that's not what they said they were doing at first. It's not what I heard. At any rate, the good news is
that's what
they're doing. And I'm very happy to hear that. So that was my little...
Yeah, they specifically said if you drove through the Silver Street development, you would not be able to tell what was affordable and what wasn't.
So it would have been nice if they'd said that right at the beginning, but I'm good with it.
And Bob, didn't you say you've been into their facility up in Weymouth, and you can attest to the fact that you really couldn't pick out what was affordable and what wasn't?
They do a really good job of blending everything in, so it's, like I said, I've been in their houses the way they're created, and they are. They appear to be well-crafted buildings. But after really thinking about this, someone who's a pro of affordable housing, the segregation part of this, I really have an issue with.
Well, it's not really segregation, though.
But in some action it is, because they're asking to move the affordable housing from this high-priced development that they're doing here and moving it over to this other one here. And I just walked the property. I don't know if you guys walked it, but I walked it today. It's a really nice day. But to look at it and look at the tension wires that are there and say, okay, fine, how this property is set out, I looked at the maps, and I'm not warm and fuzzy about it as of yet.
Well, and I
Mr.
understand what you're saying, because, but I also understand that they're trying to create a 55-plus community, and that's why they want to transfer the development rights, so that they can have seniors living together.
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, first off, I think that's going way beyond the scope of what the administrator's update is, and it's also on something that we didn't even vote on. It was an informational item.
No, the whole purpose was to be able to discuss it.
Discuss.
That's why it says
Yep,
discussion.
that's why it says discussion.
And I mean, what has been the discussions with the development company about Wade Street property?
Yeah.
So Bob, I mentioned that to you this afternoon. I'm gonna
I
bring
understand
up.
that, but since-
Thanks for the lead-in. So what I would like to say is that, again, this is in the purview of the planning board and/or ZBA. They did come and give an informational update. If any members have some opinions on that, obviously share them here, but also the appropriate venue is to bring those to those appropriate boards. That being said, is after the meeting, we did receive some notice from them that if the town's willing, they would be interested in acquiring the property the town owns at the end of Wade Street. I'm not here advocating for that or not advocating for it. What I am here is just being the middleman, so to speak, and saying that the developer would like to buy that piece of property if the Board of Selectmen want to turn that former stump dump, and I guess there is some developable land according to Bob on that, into a revenue-producing piece and sell it to the developer. They would be willing to pay for that. Unfortunately, you don't have the ability of selling it directly to them. If you so choose to, what you need to do is put that out for an RFP. So what I would suggest at your next board meeting is you have a topic of discussion saying, A, is the Board of Selectmen interested in putting that property out for development? If it is, you can go forward and issue an RFP. You could ask the redevelopment authority for their opinion if you want to do that. Again, it's under your control, your jurisdiction, but you do have authority to go out and sell the property.
I think it's a little premature, though, because I think these people need to be congratulated, because they didn't just show up and throw in their submission to the planning board. They're actually trying to go around and solicit opinions, and they told us at the meeting they want to get input from everybody, so that when they get to the planning board phase and they're submitting something, they know that basically they feel they've met all the concerns that people have about this. I mean, I hesitate to, I think that's premature. I mean, I think they've got to get something submitted, and that's way down the road before I think we look at an RFP, because they haven't even got the project approved yet. So that, and if we don't, again, nothing wrong with them inquiring about it. If we have no interest in doing that, then we have no interest in doing that. It doesn't affect their project one way or the other. They're looking to enhance their project if they can buy it. So I just think that, I thought it's a great project. I think someone is finally addressing the affordable housing issue in town. And, again, they've got a long way to go. But they started with us, and I appreciate the fact that they came to us, and they're going to be going to other committees. The town's going to have a chance to have input. And I think, as opposed to some of the way some of the projects have shown up in town, it's nice to have somebody coming in that actually wants to get some feedback before they decide what direction they're going to go in.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say, I think the whole concept was a novel concept, and, there's a long way to go in that process. They're not nearly to the point where I'm ready to say whether I'm in favor of it or not in favor of it, but I applaud them for coming before us and laying out the concept and getting some opinions, and I'm glad to see someone thinking outside the box. So I guess those are my thoughts.
Well, no, I agree. I'm so happy they did come before us, and the issue with the Wade Street property there is that the front end, when you go in there, the first area, that's where the stump dump area was.
This is the one we've discussed a few times here. We had the whole deed back and forth on the RDA and all that stuff.
But the land that goes around the back end of the property is all high and dry. It hasn't been touched. All right, so I mean, there's possibilities back there for the future.
Right, so it's in our purview.
Right, and what if they're interested in the property, I'd like them to come before us and have like something of a concept of what their intentions are with the property for it. Is it, and this is me speculating only, is that maybe they do want to expand out more properties over there or use that as their conservation area, protected zone, but open up more areas to build houses in another sense on the other side of the street or whatnot.
I
there.
agree. I think that, and it sounds like that's the way they operate. They would want to come before us and get our buy-in rather than just, and it's ultimately in the select board control. So they can ask all they want. If the select board doesn't want to do it, then we don't do it. So
we could ask them to formally submit a concept of what they would look to do it to answer Bob's question, and then you'll have a little bit more information, and you can determine if it's something you want to continue to explore or not explore, and at least you have something to look at.
yeah, I mean, I guess it wouldn't hurt to get a concept, but I mean, it just seems a little premature because they haven't even submitted the Silver Street plan to the planning board yet.
Well, I think the point is that if there was a willingness to potentially do something with that property, again, an interest, then they would probably come in and put together a concept. If they put together a concept, that would be part of their new application for the project.
Certainly doesn't hurt to throw something by us.
Yeah.
All right, so unless there's any objections, we'll ask them to submit a concept and present to the board when they're ready to present. You're not guaranteeing anything, you're not committing anything, you're just saying, okay, tell us more about what you're looking to do.
All right, and with that, we'll jump to the minutes.
One more quick thing, just a quick issue on coronavirus. Again, we had a department head meeting this morning. I just want to let everybody know that our Board of Health agent and also Tom Walsh has been in constant video conferences with CDC and other infectious disease groups that happens with public safety. So they're aware of what's going on. Their recommendation is continue to wash hands with warm water. It's better to wash hands with soap than to use the sanitizers. They're recommending that people don't go out and buy masks because those are needed for public safety, and there's a shortage of those. And if you do see somebody that is coughing, try to stay 6 feet away. If you do detect that you have a temperature, then try to isolate yourself. Generally, this is nothing more than the flu generally, except for certain people over a certain age or certain people that have some type of challenges.
That would be people like you and I, Ron.
Closed cabin.
Yeah. So again, it's, they have everything under control. I just wanted the board to know that your professional staff is addressing this. They're aware of it. You see a lot of press going on this. Just our professional staff is doing what they need to do, and they're ahead of the curve on this. And also, Tom did inform me that he does have a stockpile of certain masks.
Well, that's for the ambulance folks, I think, yeah.
That is correct.
All right, minutes of February 11th,
I move
2020.
we approve the minutes of February 11th, 2020.
Second.
Further discussion?
Is that the one? Yeah, so there's a couple of changes. On the CMW, I already submitted them to Elaine. There's an extra W on the CMW.
Oh, yeah.
W.
No, Sarah's rubbing off on you.
RRDD. It's CMW RRDD. Also, there's no mention of the reason why Mr. Corbo, our Attorney Corbo, didn't go ahead and are going to represent the town. I think that needs to be put in there because of the information that is in here.
Not in the first paragraph? No. No, in the first paragraph, he's talking about asking us to consent to represent both towns. And then Bob read the letter that he read, which also isn't mentioned in the minutes. And then Mr. Corbo's backed off of even asking us to let
Because he felt
right.
there would be a conflict. Okay. So we can add the fact that Corbo mentioned he was not going to get involved because of a conflict of interest.
Yeah. And I gave Elaine the letter that I read from.
To be attached to the minutes.
To be attached to the minutes.
So do you want to make that motion, Alan, with those amendments?
I make a motion we approve the minutes of February 11th, 2020 as amended.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, the ayes have it. Next meetings come up March 17th, then we have a joint meeting with the school committee on March 24th. So please slip that in there. That's a joint meeting. We'll be having the superintendent from the Old Colony out here, and some of the discussion will be about their discussions, ongoing discussions about basically becoming too small, that they may need to expand or build new, and we want to know about what implications that has for the town of Carver if that happens. So that'll be the primary topic for that meeting. And then April 7th, town meetings April 14th, and then, the rest of the meetings as mentioned. I should add, there may be additional meetings of this board as we move forward with the town administrator search that may have to be called just as needed. I think once Sarah's collected all the information and you feel you'd like to report back to the board, that rather than wait for the 17th, maybe we'll try to slip something in between there. So I just caution that we may be posting some meetings and try to get people in.
We can get blown up.
What is that? Yeah.
Whose phone, where is the beeping coming from? That you're beeping, you've been beeping? Well, and by the way, I think it should be noted that Sarah's beeping probably because she became a grandmother last week. And,
I'm sorry, that wasn't part of the agenda.
Well, I understand, but nevertheless, I congratulate.
Congratulations once again.
I forgot to mute
Uh,
my
what-
phone.
but about-
Mr. Chairman and Sarah, there are about 3 or 4 firms that do town manager searches in the state. And I don't know if the board wants to interview all 3 or 4 firms, but you get different caliber of people depending upon what firm you choose.
And, but I think there's a distinction between interim versus when you decide to go for
Same
permanent.
for both.
Oh, yeah.
All right, we'll go down to community announcements. Mr. Belvin.
I have none tonight.
Mr. Dunham.
Oh, we've gone on long enough.
Mr. Townsend.
Nothing this evening.
Ms. Hewins.
Besides, she's a
What is the
grandma.
name of your new grandchild?
His name is going to be Jacob. It is Jacob, he's already born. Yeah.
Anything else?
No, thank you. That's my community.
All right, I will add nothing in order to move the meeting along. Employment update, new hires and resignations of part-time town clerk position? I guess we'll just
Yes,
note
we
of that.
did have a resignation of our town, our records administrator, Candace Corthell, she resigned. And we've also have our new custodian. The second shift was filled, and Carol Dwyer is back working over at Town Hall. She went to the school department for a little while, and now she's back here on second shift.
Excellent. All right. If there's nothing else to come before the board, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
There a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Being none? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Do we know who won the election in town, in the state, by the way?